So we're gonna get going just in the sake of time, and I know a lot of you guys already have commitments, so is there any opening comments from CAO or somebody else?
From this side of the table, I think we'll turn it right over to the experts. That's all right with you?
Yeah, no, it's perfectly fine with me. I'm Mike, I'm just kind of stepping in here because I'm physically here with them. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, appreciate that. You can read the room better.
Well, we're reading an attempt.
There's less snow behind council.
Yeah, I know. I'm very happy that you changed your background. Extraordinarily happy. So we have Jay. You want to introduce your guys, everybody who's here, and then
So I'll kick her off. So I'm Jay Mason. I'm the Director of Public Operations, and with us online we have Louise Stewart, who is the Senior Manager of Public Works, and as well as we have John Potter, who is our Manager of Transportation Operations and Waste Management, and he will kick off the presentation for us.
Hey, thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and whoever may be joining us online this afternoon. So today I'm going to go through a snow and ice control workshop, and we keep it pretty high level, but we're going to talk about some of the issues that arise and go through experiences. I was born in Montreal, moved to St. Albert in 1980, so I've kind of seen the snow out there as opposed to here. Grew up here in St. Albert. Been in the business of delivering snow and ice control in a municipal setting for about, this will be my 20th winter as a matter of fact, and it'll be my 5th winter now here in snow and ice control is my passion. So I get a little excited. I get very excited when I get a chance to talk to everyone about it. I used to referee in my former life, so I referee hockey for a living, and so that gave me good a foundation to deal with snow and ice control issues. Oftentimes can be a negative or very polarizing topic, so it certainly comes in handy in doing some of that. So why are we here today? So we're gonna go over a little bit and explain the science, the methodology, the issues, how we manage resident concerns, some changes and potential changes to our snow and ice control program, and then the history of a policy review and what the policy says. So the policy was currently reviewed in 2019. We'll probably be due to be looking at that again here soon. Answer any questions you may have around snow and ice control, and please, so at the end we will be taking some questions. The presentation itself is about an hour and a half. We'll be taking a quick break in between that, and if you have a question, please, if you could note the slide number, hold them to the end of the presentation, and then come back to it and note the slide number for reference. So our team's already begun preparing for winter, whether we like it or not. There could be some snow in the forecast, but we start preparing basically all summer. And in public operations, we kind of never slow down. So we kind of move from snow to potholes to asphalt repair, and then start focusing again on winter. So my team's already been working on training. Maybe we're looking at some people getting Class 3 licenses and so forth. That's already begun. Next week, we're going to be doing a snow and ice seminars, relatively similar to what we're going to be doing here today, but a little more in depth, a little bit more operational.
For who?
For my team.
Okay.
Yeah, so they start to get excited about winter.
Doesn't.
And yeah.
I was worried you were going to get a Class 3 license.
Yeah. So funny they mentioned that, Councillor. We'll see some video a little bit later that I think you'll find quite humorous.
I hope so.
That being said, I mean, it's kind of a never-ending process of training and preparing. So like today, with my team next week, this is about getting everybody on the same page. Really, whether a resident's concern comes into the council through our public works line, online, whatever the case, it's important that everybody's on the same page, that they're giving the same information. So that people, snow and ice control sometimes, The issues sometimes are very polarizing. If we're saying the same thing, it helps in staying consistent. It will help alleviate some of those angers out there. Okay, so first off, so some of the science involves snow and ice control. This is one area that's definitely over the last 10, 15 years has gotten a lot more technical. We look at weather monitoring. We use the Environment Canada Weather Office, ARWIS stations that are located throughout the province. Those can be found in 511 Alberta, along with cameras, road conditions and such. So, you know, I look at those things every couple hours. I'm looking at any of those websites. So what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking at the temperature, the asphalt in particular, not the ambient air temperature. The important thing for snow and ice control is looking at the temperature of the asphalt. So looking at dew point, humidity, winds, sunny, being sunny or cloudy can drastically impact the temperature of the asphalt. Now, if I look at a forecast, we're supposed to get snow tonight. I will be, I'm just hypothetical. I didn't mean to scare you.
Don't joke about
I
that.
didn't mean to scare you there.
Okay.
But I'm looking at the storms usually track from the northwest to the southeast. So I'm looking at how the radar's building up by Grand Prairie and how it's moving along, how fast it's moving. I'm looking at I hop on 511 Alberta, look at the camera, look to see what the temperature of the asphalt is prior to the storm. And then as the storm's going over, how fast is the storm moving through? And then then I look behind it and see what the temperature of the asphalt is. Now, why is this all important? That's going to affect what we do. So it's going to affect our mix design. It's going to affect to see how much we prepare, how much snow that we have. So all these things, all these factors are going into the equations on making decisions.
How do you measure asphalt? I know it's supposed to wait to the end, but I'm not on that wrong. How do you measure asphalt
So
temperature?
there's a sensor in the road.
Okay.
And you can find those on 511 Alberta if you go to the road cameras. And it'll show you the dew point, it'll show you the relative humidity, the wind direction.
And the asphalt temperature.
Yeah.
Isn't that useful to know?
Yeah. So as with salt, if you remember back from your junior high science classes, when you did that experiment with the salt in the styrofoam cup, salt becomes less reactive as it gets cold up. So,
You saved your spot, Kathy.
so then some of we also look at the short, medium and long range forecasts. So we've all looked at, we've all been familiar with the Farmer's Almanac. I look at those things. I even driving around, looking at those types of things. You have to prepare.
Not me. Just wait. Just wait. I wanted to keep the Zoom on for the chat. Done.
Okay.
Okay. I just in case there's chat and then there's, they're chatting. So I thought I should have the Zoom on.
No problem at all.
Okay.
Okay, so and then the other thing around that we've been talking about lately, the big buzzword is climate resiliency. So is there climate change? Is there not? Dealing with the freeze thaw cycles, dealing with rain events like we had significantly last year. Rain events can actually help us to some degree as well. So I always tend to look at the positive side of things. The rain events put a crust of ice on top of the snow. So there's less drifting events when we have more moisture, so to speak. When it's dry snow, it tends to blow around very easily. We also have a heat island effect. So as the metropolis of the Edmonton area gets bigger, it absorbs a lot of radiant sunlight. And you got to look at these things. And in particular, the last couple years, we've had a later start to our snow events. And you've seen that. So typically, that means a lot of absorbent energy, and that can actually affect weaker systems. So you got to be conscious of that. So, and what happens is being on the outskirts of the big heat island, which is Edmonton, you got to watch that system doesn't sit over St. Albert and Sherwood Park and areas like that for too long and dump an unusual amount of snow in a short amount of time. So you just got to be ready for those things. So studying those things, looking at the radar, looking at the ARWA stations, those are all things that are going to help us, take a direction on how we're going to treat this. Okay, so then just an example of the weather office and then the 511 Alberta app. So each site kind of has each camera throughout the province will have different angles, so you can see what the conditions are, whether it's sunny, cloudy, those kinds of things. And Councillor, if you see here, that's the second one is the pavement temperature, which can vary significantly even in the winter time from your ambient air temperature. And it's due to radiant heat. So if it's a nice new black asphalt road, it absorbs a lot of sun energy. So if it's sunny, and even two sides of the streets, one side in the shade, one side in the sun, the temperature can vary 5 to 10 degrees pretty easily.
Are you going to tell us the bad temperature or like where we concern temperature? I don't want to wreck your spoiler alert, but
Yeah.
Are you going to tell us later what the bad ambient temperatures
The
of your
bad
car?
temperatures are, yes, yeah, anything below -7 drastically reduces the impact that salt's going to have on the roadway. Yeah, but that's, again, it's not always a bad thing, because as soon as it gets cold, then when the snow falls, it's not going to melt on the road. Therefore, I can mechanically remove it instead of chemically remove it. And my preference would be to mechanically remove snow, not to melt snow. Typically, we're a cold environment. So you melt the snow, you got to deal with it refreezing somewhere. Whether that's going to be an hour from now, 2 hours from now, a week from now, that water is in January and February, it's not getting to the catch basin to take it away. It's sitting on the road and it's going to turn ice somewhere.
If I'm a car,
Hey,
but if I'm a car and if I'm driving, what's the temperature as a driver that I'm like, oh no, it's snowing and the road is this temperature?
You know what? It's a variance, right? So all those things that he was talking about, the difference is the risk. It's so if the road is colder and you get the high dew point and warmer air, then it freezes on the road, right? And then you get the shade and it doesn't melt as quickly. So there's not really a specific temperature to worry about except for the salt.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
that variance in.
okay.
And they're all factors.
Yeah.
That's why I get excited.
And well, you should.
So like they all impact our conditions. And it's something that we have to use that to convey to our team to make sure that they're not negatively impacting the conditions. Because if you look at your dew point, for example, or a storm's coming in and it's the asphalt temperature is +10. After the storm, the ambient air temperature is going to be -30. The road's going to be -10, -15. And we're not at the start of the storm, just because the road temperature is hot, we're not going to run out with salt and throw it all over the place to melt that snow, because it's going to get cold behind it. So you wait for the snow to accumulate, you plow it off as quickly as you can, and then you don't have the ice layer underneath it.
John, you're gonna get delayed here and,
Yeah,
Hours though. He's
no, I know,
talking
but we
an hour and a
have some of our members
Do
have.
you want to wait till the end of the questions?
Yeah, I know. What I asked
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. I know those are good questions. So
Yeah, they are.
Write them down.
write them down.
And it helps, sometimes it helps some of my discussion points as well. So anyways, here's the 5-year average. So if you look at Edmonton there, the average temperature ranges from -5 as a high temperature to a low temperature -16 in the months of December, January, and February. Average rainfall in those 3 months is 3 mils. We approximately had 15 to 18 mils in those 3 months last year. And then our average snowfall within those months is 51. And our yearly snowfall, so for the whole winter season, is about 115. How many centimeters of snow did we have last year? Approximately.
I'm gonna guess 250.
120 centimeters was what was reported.
Average.
last year. So relatively normal year.
Yeah.
What did it make? What made it abnormal is the amount of rain we had.
Yeah.
So in my 20 years experience, no two winters have been alike. Again, those are variables that impact snow removal. Okay, so some of the methodology we use in snow and ice control, it's driven by the policy. And then the service levels within that policy, right? We plan and budget for the average winter, not the extreme. So we can't, we get an average amount of snow, 120 centimeters, not a lot compared to places like Montreal, Toronto, Halifax. But we budget for the average. When we fluctuate, when we're getting a little more than average, or we're having problems maintaining our service levels, that's when we look at bringing in hired equipment when required to achieve those service levels. Talk about the 5 R's of snow and ice control. So the right amount, the right mix, right time, right place, and recording it. So the right amount is placing, basically when it comes to salt, we're looking at placing no more, no less. I don't want to put any more salt out than I have to. I don't want it sitting dormant out there. I want it to put out just enough to accomplish what it's supposed to do. Then we look at the right mix design. So again, looking at the temperatures, do we add a little more salt to the sand mix? We add some chip to the mix. We got some freezing rain in the forecast, or we've had some freezing rain, those types of things. Doing it at the right time, as I explained before about the storm coming in. If it's warm now and it's gonna get cold, there's no sense going out trying to melt the snow at the start. Then putting it in the right place. So we talk about, we train our teams to put the material, not just go out and continuously sand. We're putting it at corners. We're putting it at crosswalks. We're putting it in places where the vehicles need it, not just continuously sanding throughout the city. And recording it. So we track all the material that we've used and so forth. And then we make sure it's also important recording the information to reflect liability as well. Then we have many variables. Okay, some of the variables are environmental, geographic, regions, influence, the regional influences. So everything in the media, for example, and radio or television, they're always interviewing City of Edmonton staff. That's one of our realities. It is snow and ice control, but we are quite different in terms of what our service levels are there. So often people watch the media and then they see, oh, that must be the same way in St. Albert right now, and often it's not, or it's different perception. We can even have geological variables. We have clay, for example. So even though we're not too far away from Calgary, they don't have frost in their ground because of the bedrock. They're sitting on bedrock. So that can impact snow and ice control drastically as well. So we're making sure we are equipped and resourced adequately. And again, it's for the average. And we account for things like equipment breakdowns. We make sure that we adequate train. And then we also, with our teams, we cross-train from team to team. So if say a waste operator is trained on a class 3 truck, we will train them in snow and ice control and vice versa. So that if, we went through a pandemic the last 2 years, that was part of our pandemic planning, to make sure that, if somebody went down or a group of individuals went down, that we could backfill seamlessly and still provide safe transportation, which we were fortunate that we did. Okay, so just some quick stats for context from the last 2 winters to kind of show you the difference between the two. In the winter of 2020, 2021, 1,800 tons of sand, 113 ton of chip, and 426 ton of salt. Last winter into the first 3 months of this year, 6,796 ton of sand, 384 ton of chip, and 979 ton of salt. Okay, so as you can see, the rain really impacted the amount of material that we had to use. We typically, we mix and stockpile our sand and at the end of August, all ready to go. We stockpile about 6,000 ton of sand in our sand shed this year, which we were at about 5,500. When we run out, we just bring more in. It's not usually an issue, but that was a significant amount of material that was used. Probably somewhere between those two numbers or about the average, other than the salt, we're typically around 450 ton of salt in a year, which is considerably less than anyone else in the metro area. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our roads teams first. Our road team maintains 870 lane kilometers of road network. We do things like sanding, both from a route sanding perspective and a spot sanding. Spot sanding examples, we're heading out in the morning, hitting the school zones, the bridge decks, dealing with freestyle locations, hills and shady spots. Plowing, we're both route and spots. So we're route plowing during a storm. We'll talk about a little bit about chicane plowing, and I'll get into the priority 1 through 4 in that. So priority ones and 2s, the timelines are the same. The priority ones, however, is St. Albert Trail, Ray Given Drive. We're going to stay on those basically until it stops snowing. Once it does stop, we're going to finish plowing up, clean it up, and then move on to our priority 2s. During a snowstorm, we do have to hit things like the hills, McKinney Avenue, so not normally a priority 1, but we have a lot of hills off and on St. Albert Trail, for example. So those are the types of things that we're doing. The priority 2s are all arterial roads, so all the other arterial roads. So McKinney Avenue, Dawson, there. Those types of roads. And again, those are both within 8 hours after the snowfall is ended. If the snowfall starts up again, another storm moves in before we're finished the 2s, we go back to the priority 1s and vice versa. So our priority 3s are our local collector and commercial roads. And there we say within the service level, within 16 hours after snow event. 2 to 5 centimeters. So and then everything else is kind of priority 4. Our local roads, our rural roads. Rural roads are within 24 hours. Our collectors receive a clearing, so a snow removal after 20 to 30 centimeters of snow accumulation throughout the winter. And the estimated time for that for removal is about 5 days, and depending on how much equipment and that we move in. It's typically around 5 days. So do that up. Residential roads removal normally occurs. So removal, plowing, same thing there, 6 to 9 centimeters of snowpack. Okay, once that's accumulated, that's kind of the window, the target. So for example, the first snow removal last year on residentials occurred in November. We had about a 7.5 centimeter snowpack throughout the city. Was monitoring what the weather was doing. The snowpack hadn't gone through multiple freeze thaw cycles, very unstable. And it was going to get warm later in the week, which was going to definitely impact mobility throughout the residential network. We made the call to put in a residential plowing cycle. Downtown removal normally occurs after 5 to 10 centimeters of snow accumulation, and in the parking lanes downtown, we got a lot of snow happening on sidewalks, so we bring it out, take it away. So that's kind of where the priorities are at. So methodology continues. So we look at snow. Where do we do snow removal? We look at the downtown. We have within the budget a collector removal, which is the collectors within the residential areas. Monolithic sidewalk locations, which is one of the things that's different from a geographical point of view. City of St. Albert has about 95% of our sidewalk inventory is boulevard walk. as opposed to monolithic. So monolithic means the sidewalks adjacent to the roadway. Having a boulevard walk is great to be able to store snow. Having a monolithic walk, you got to put that windrow next to the sidewalk, and it drastically restricts the width of the road. So here we tend to pick those up when we can, and we do it quite often, but usually after snowfall, it takes a few days, and then we tackle it when we do. We also pick up school zones on a pretty regular basis, keep the kids safe, try to keep the windrows down on the boulevards. And then we're also responsible for removing all the snow on city-owned parking lots. So some of the types of equipment we use and what the equipment can do, what its limitations are. I'm going to have some pictures and I'll go over that fairly shortly here. We have truck plow, sander with combo box. Combo box means that we can put sand in it, can act as a sander, or we can haul snow with it, and we don't have to change boxes out. So we save a lot of time doing that, and we can easily transition from one to the other with ease. We have sidewalk plows, we have a grader, a few loaders, and a big industrial snow blower, which I'll show you here in a minute. We try to cross-train all team members on different types of equipment, so we have a little more capacity when things do hit the fan here with the snow. And what we do when it's not snowing. So we're sanding, we're doing spot sanding, we're hauling snow, we're cleaning up. We do have to do preventative maintenance on our vehicles. We have to do slack adjustments on the chain, on the conveyors. We do our brake adjustments, all clean, wash the equipment. All those things will maintain the life of the vehicle, keep it in good operating order, and hopefully prevent it from breaking down when we do need it. The other things that we do is we fill potholes. And once that's usually more of a springtime thing, depending on how much freezing rain we've had, how many freeze thaw cycles. Typically, as mid-February, the potholes start creeping up on us. And then in springtime operations, we really start to focus on removing snow from boulevards. So we try to expedite spring coming. But the reason why we do that removal from boulevards is that the sooner we can take it off the boulevard, the sooner the boulevard dries out, giving it a little more capacity. And then it's somewhere for the water to get to the drain, so it's not flooding out our sidewalks and refreezing. Because the sun's just not strong enough in February to do that, to dry it up properly. So we don't want to have to go through back and forth with that freeze thaw on the sidewalks especially. So that's one of the things that we do. And then as we're going through that in the winter time, we do remove some snow from the boulevard in places because that boulevard's basically designed for snow. So we want to have the capacity for the next storm. So we'll take a bite out of it. You know, we see us doing that in December, January kind of thing. That's what we're doing. We're restoring a little bit more capacity for the snow storage on the boulevard. Okay, front mount plow. Okay, set with the sander unit. As you can see, this one's equipped with a wing. We put the wings on 3 of our trucks about 8 to 10 years ago now. That gives us a little more capacity. It's basically a plow and a half kind of thing. Just a picture here of our plow team out on St. Albert Trail. You can get an idea. This is called the plow chicane. Quite neat to see. We really want residents to help us out here when we're out plowing like this, to stay back. We're trying to make the road safe, and if they're navigating in between the vehicles, that's kind of the messaging that we want. It's kind of an unsafe situation because they are between each truck. That windrow of snow is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we do try to stay within a certain range of each other, but at the same time, we have to adhere to the traffic regulations just like everybody else. So if 3 trucks made it through the light, the other trucks behind, there's that windrow of snow. So we really want people's cooperation there to help us out. And again, this is just the same sort of thing. As you can see, the front plow has a wing attachment on it. So, and then we just try to stagger them. So if they've got a wing attachment on it, the truck's setting up in the middle of it. So just kind of overlapping by half each time. Here's our loader. We have a few loaders, and then we have different attachments for the loaders, and they all do a little bit different things. So the one on the left is a bucket, and the loader on the right, same loader, different attachment. It's a plow blade that actually has the ability to adjust its ends from coming out. So it can go from a 12-foot blade, 14-foot blade to a 16-foot blade. It's very good at doing the bigger parking lots like we have in the back or at Service Place. And then as it can also actually, when the ends come in, it acts more like a bucket. Okay, just again, a couple buckets here with our loaders. We actually load our sand with the loader as well. So the sand shed's behind it. So we load all our trucks with the loader as well. It's not just for cleaning up snow. Okay, super excited to get this in our inventory. So we talked a little bit about the icebreakers. We demoed the sidewalk machine icebreaker last year and a loader mounted icebreaker. This is the one. This is ours, right? This is a picture of ours. It's coming this week, and we're really excited to get this. And I'm just going to show you a video here of what it can do. These things don't load right. Oh, look at that.
Well, they come by, well, no, it just breaks up the ice.
And so that's so you guys can like shovel it better?
And it creates traction too.
Okay, so you're just gonna leave it like that
No, we'll come behind.
and then shovel it?
Yeah.
And are you going
Initial-
all the way down to the asphalt with that?
Yeah, but it doesn't penetrate the asphalt. They're actually pretty neat machine.
Nice.
Traditionally, you can do that with grader,
Mm.
but it's very hard on the equipment.
Here it
Yeah,
is.
because of the scraping?
So we've never had one of these.
No,
Oh,
and this guy's excited already about it, so I don't know.
As long as he doesn't take it on service.
Is there any possibility it could hurt the asphalt though?
No. It's
How do you make it go down just enough that it hits it, but doesn't?
just the way the thing's designed, with how it's in line with the bottom of the equipment.
Okay,
And during the winter too, your asphalt's a bit harder too as well, since
Yeah.
the frozenness and so,
And you could take it over to the boulevards and aerate at the same time.
yeah. Multitasking.
Yeah, it's being.
okay, cool,
Yeah.
thank you.
It was a nice invention. So whenever we do RMR and we get the units, we get options for attachments. And so when this was invented, we had blades already in place or buckets. So it was a matter of not replacing the bucket, keeping the old bucket and asking for this attachment instead. So it was a real bonus for us that sort of.
Just have the one though?
That
Just have one?
we have one for a loader and we have one you'll see later for a sidewalk machine as well.
You just have to reshare it, John, is all.
Yeah.
You share your screen.
The public watching this right now, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like this on.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
It's gonna challenge you, switching it from YouTube to.
Does it not want to let you share?
No, they
Well,
Call it a flail.
Or show.
looked out of the wrong thing.
Or what?
On this.
Just don't have
Natalie
cameras
just-
up?
Yeah, story. Monitor.
Are you out of the meeting?
Oh, it's running for just.
Yeah.
Oh, you're still in there.
You attach it to a tank.
Rangers.
Natalie?
Everybody follows in behind it.
last week.
here it is.
I would just say, I mean, like she said, at the end of the chat.
Because if you're in a tank, it's like.
Wes sent me a text.
Oh,
I think he's still here.
Sorry, we just have a little technical difficulty here, you guys.
There we go.
Yep, there we go. John's got it.
There you
Now-
go. Okay, you're not done though.
Start your slides.
No, not done.
No, like, say big.
Yeah.
Not from beginning. Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, it's
It's all
all good.
good.
It worked well.
Okay,
There.
so yeah, so Mayor, you were asking about, is this our only one? So we're gonna look at, so every type of piece of equipment we get in, and we're gonna certainly evaluate it. We know it's gonna do the job. I'm really excited to use it in the cul-de-sacs, particularly in the winter. You get a lot of freeze thaw. The water comes off the top of the houses and tends to build up the ice in the bulb of the cul-de-sac and places like that. We're gonna use it. We're gonna use it in the gutters during multiple freeze thaws as it sloughs down the windrow. We can do that work with a grader. It's extremely hard on the grader circle and that kind of thing. Now, just like any other piece of equipment, if we need more, we'll either come to you with a capital purchase, or we'll continue to, just try to make do with what we have. This is an attachment for the loader, for example. So within the RMR, we can get a loader bucket. We can get another icebreaker. So we'll evaluate how many we need and how we use it and that sort of thing as we go along. But it's definitely going to help us a ton. It's really even helps us in lanes a lot too, because the lanes, it's got a reverse crown. They're kind of deep. So it's going to get down there and really break up the ice for us. So we're really excited to get and use it this year. Okay, the loader, again, a very versatile piece of equipment. So, and this is one of our blowers. So, this one of our, we only have one blower. Now, the thing about a blower is it's very difficult to get one in the industry. They're just not available to rent. They're a little higher capital cost, and for a small window of time, they're just not available out there. A couple of the companies will run with a spare, but it goes very quickly. So other municipalities have many more than we do, just as an insurance package. Now you can remove snow with a loader. It just takes a lot longer to bucket it away, as we experienced that last year in November when our blower went down. Okay, so there's a little bit of risk there. I've got a video. I'll skip over that one for the sake of time. It's just a truck. Well, you hop on YouTube or whatever and show a truck blowing snow using a truck. Montreal usually has some.
Yeah, people send us that video all the time.
Yeah.
We should do this.
Right?
yes.
You see it?
Yeah, sure. we can. Yeah, absolutely.
I think if it's what I'm thinking. It's a week.
It's like a giant snow blower.
And it goes into a truck.
Large and dump.
The giant storm.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are saying, we should do this. I think we do. Now I'm gonna prove it.
They're just.
I think Mike's good for that.
Is that what you were thinking?
So watch all 51 minutes. I can only hope.
Okay.
It's stimulating
It is.
on Netflix.
It's like fireman.
So we do this. This
Yes.
is St. Albert though, is it?
Yeah, we actually, so we don't typically blow our snow into a tandem truck, but we can. We have boards for our trucks. And remember I talked about before, we have combo trucks. We typically, when we're doing a snow clearing operation, we'll bring in hired end dumps. Usually about anywhere between 10 and 15, depending on the volume amount of snow that we've have to accumulate or have to pick up. But this is quite common. Remember I was telling you about I was born in Montreal. When I was 8 years old, the whole island of Montreal got shut down. And this is how they had to remove the snow off every street on the island. And they weren't casting in the trucks at that time. They were just casting it on our front lawn. So we had some pretty wicked snow forts.
That's awesome.
When I was 8 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. See, honestly, I'll get people sending me similar videos all winter long. We should do this.
Yeah, and we do. And in my experience, like that's,
It looks like it would really cut back the time.
Yeah, you're plowing and clearing at the same time.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean.
You have to put them in windrows.
You do. So here's, I'm gonna just stop.
No, you can keep playing it while we talk.
So.
This is depressing, you guys.
So when we had that, November, when everything kind of went awry with the collector roadways. That was what we were heading to there was quite a bit of snowpack on the ground from multiple snow events. It was quite cold. It was packed on. Nobody was complaining because it was a fairly decent driving surface. That was on a Monday. I looked at the forecast. We're gonna have 10 to 12 degrees by the end of the week. I need to get that snow off the collector road. So we had every intention just to, instead, we're going to bring the graders in, put it to the windrow in the middle, blow it away. Unfortunately, the blower broke, right? But those are the kinds of things. So there are times where we're plowing it, putting in windrows, save time. The graders sometimes work quicker. That we do collector removal like this quite often when we've got the graders in the residential. Because it's just easier. There's no deadheading. They're already there. If we're doing residential, there's a good amount of snow probably on the collectors, those kinds of things. So if we do those kinds, and I look for those opportunities all the time.
The interesting thing is that you have to have a no parking zone. You just see the no parking zone stickers there.
Yeah, exactly. I've got it on my list to talk about.
Yeah, and we're gonna, and so do I in anticipation, Counselor. So at the end, absolutely. I do have some experience with parking bans as well. All those kinds of things. So like, yeah, snow's not unique to St. Albert, right?
No.
So it is interesting though. You see some really neat things with a video like that, the icebreaker. That's exactly where we went with it, right? We heard somebody say, "Hey, do you guys have one of these?" And it was a sidewalk video out of Halifax. So, and that's another source of information too. I'm always, Googling stuff like this.
John, can I say then 1 sec?
Yeah.
Just one comment. So this is all general cleanup, right? So people sometimes get confused when we're doing our initial response. It's a plow response. We're trying to meet those timelines.
Yeah.
This is after the fact.
Right, totally, yeah.
And only in areas that don't have that boulevard capacity, because obviously trucking is extremely expensive. So that's the whole benefit of saying we're having those boulevards that you talked about earlier, is that it helps us manage cost.
Yeah.
So can you just blow it right onto the boulevard?
We
just plow it.
We could.
Then you would have to
Yeah.
follow up with the sidewalk cleanup.
Yeah.
We have done it here before. I prefer that my teams don't do
Yeah.
that from a safety standpoint.
Yeah.
Somebody's walking to school.
Well, no,
Yeah, a little, there goes Fluffy.
not only just with snow, but I've seen the snow blowers, I've seen water valves go through the chute
Yeah.
and they go right through buildings. So
Okay.
that's the reason why they have the snowboards on.
Yeah.
And often you'll see the snowboards are reinforced with chain link fence.
Wow.
That's the catch. That's the kind of force that you're talking about. You want to keep that water valve, for example, in
Oh, yeah.
the truck.
Garbage can lids, you name it.
As you talk, John, and you obviously live and breathe this.
Yeah.
I think, and it's something we talk about at the end, we need to, what's going on in his head public.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Talking about.
Like, why are they clearing the roads when it's so nice out and it's easy to drive? And what a waste of text. Well, John has looked at the forecast. It's going to warm up and you're going to be on an ice surface in a couple of days. Those kind of things, we need to get ahead of that. Yeah. So we just follow you around with the camera all winter long.
Nicole is in here as well.
Good, okay.
So, and that's something we've really pushed the last few years, is really getting ahead on the social media. You're still gonna have people that don't think it's the right way of doing things, but for the most part, when you educate,
Yeah.
They really,
And give it to
Appreciate it.
council,
yes.
right, ahead of time, because
Yeah.
we're the ones that field the questions generally, right?
And that's kind of where the video that we did, right?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, so we're gonna explore those types of things. I got a little bit more on that later on.
Okay.
Right, so yeah, absolutely, we can use all forms of media to our advantage. It'd be nice to get on, the local metro region TV and explain some of the things that are unique to St. Albert, because, but unfortunately, we don't have control over that, right? So. Okay, here's our grader. This is another misconception that people have. They see the road's getting graded, and it's not a grader usually typically out on the road. They see they're talking the truck plow.
I got a question. What's the difference between a plow and a grader?
Right.
Now I know.
Get a resident phoning you and saying, if you can ask whether it was yellow or white, that helps me actually, because then it can, if it's a grader, we only have one. So, or if we have a grader and we're residential plowing, we got hired equipment in, then I can start sourcing whose it is and what we're doing there kind of thing.
And we own graders.
We own one grader. Yeah.
I feel we own one of a lot of things. This is like, what if it goes down, dude?
Oh, so we contract a lot.
Contract.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, it's a great question though, because, and it's a great point. Now, again, we're looking at resourcing for the average, right? So before annexation, for example, having one was okay. They're really easy to get, relatively easy to get in the hired world to bring graders in. Now with annexation, we need a grader with a different attachment, bigger. So we could have, if we want to do more snow removal in-house, having two, we're getting big enough that having two, we can keep them busy around the clock kind of thing.
And we also budget for full year, right? So the cost of a grader is very expensive. So to bring one in, we need summer work for it as well. And St. Albert had its capacity of gravel roadways. With annexation, we obviously have grown that extensively. So that then determines the need for another one because we're able to keep it busy full year.
Oh, how much is a grader?
Depends on the size.
You guys say very
The
expensive.
grader that we've requested, I believe it was 590,000.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, 590,000.
Rent to own.
Right.
Okay, so that I was mentioning this is my fifth winter here. What was unique is I was never in charge of doing parking lots in my previous experience. I couldn't understand why we were putting sand in the parking lots instead of using like the private contractors. So we made that change for a number of reasons. Then we also purchased, we purchased a salt dog. So basically it's a pickup truck mounted sander. And we put plows on our team lead trucks and the salt dog truck as well to operate, clear driveways, open up fire lanes at service when it's storming, those kinds of things. Using chip is a great, it's been a really good thing. And we save a lot of time and create capacity for our crews. Now, usually you put out sand, it's got a little bit of salt in it to keep it from freezing. In a parking lot, you never get right down to the bare asphalt. It's always there. The parking lot's always going through freeze-thaw cycles, puddles, refreezing, freezing. The chip will actually, I'll show you, that's my show and tell items for later, but the chip will actually protrude through the ice more than sand. So we don't have to go back to parking lots to sand it as often. So it's really been a pretty good innovation. This is the loader with the big, the 16 foot blade on it. So again, you kind of see where you can see the snow's been removed there. That was about 4 or 5 minutes of work. So it moves a lot of snow real quick. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about ice blades and our snow blades. So our typical blades, they do wear out. They go on all our trucks, whether they're front mount, wings, underbody plows. The underbodies are the mid body plows underneath the unit. We can put ice blades on those too. We can also put ice blades on our grader. This is a picture of the ice blades. Now, on the grader, we had that, we utilized that a lot last year when we had all the rain events. But we can also use this in the residential areas where we're kind of grooming the snowpack. So before it gets to that 6 to 9 centimeters, or maybe it's in January, maybe we're in December and we're at somewhere between 6 and 9 and it's really cold, but it's a nice driving surface. We're going to come in with the ice blades and groom it up just like the ski trail groomers do. We're just flattening out the ruts, taking out some of the bumps and providing it. And then it kind of flattens out smooth. Now, you got to watch when it gets into that window of 6 to 9 centimeters, that if it starts to get warm, if you're going to have a week long of warmth, you got to make sure that you got to be able to react to that fairly quickly, because that's a lot of snow sitting in the snowpack. And if it destabilizes quickly, you're going to have mobility issues. Okay, now we'll get into the sidewalk part of the operation. Okay. Oh, there we go. So basically the same thing goes with the sidewalks. We have priority 1, 2s, and 3s. The Red Willow Trail out behind the river valley here by St. Albert Place is a priority 1. We broom, we sweep the snow-free surface within 8 hours, and we're out working, clearing after just 1 centimeter of snow. Our priority 2s are arterial sidewalks and trails, our collector sidewalks and trails, and our bus stops. Again, we're looking at 2 to 5 centimeters of snow accumulation and then plow within 48 hours. So that's the same level of service as we expect our residents on the private walks to do. Priority 3 is the internal trails, some connector sidewalks, again, 2 to 5 centimeters and plow within 72 hours.
Question, I know does the 8 hours, et cetera, start when the snow stops falling?
That's correct. Just like with the
So if it
roads.
snows for like 3 days straight,
Correct.
it has to be finished within 8 hours or whatever of it stopping.
That's correct.
And it resets if it snows, if it starts again.
Yeah.
So
We would, and often we're doing it, like if it snows for 3 straight days, we're not going to be, we're not just sitting out on the
Sure.
trail. We're going to have no choice but to go to other places because of mobility issues, right? Like, so snow and ice control policy, minimize economic loss. If things come to a grinding halt, goods and services aren't being delivered, we're opening ourselves up to economic loss and for public safety. Things aren't going to be safe if we just move on, but you're quite right. But it is like, and it doesn't do that here a whole lot. At least I haven't noticed that in my experience. Like it'll snow for a day, it'll snow for 8 hours, and then it stops and it kind of gets bright and sunny and then it's not very often. It's day after day after day where we get walloped.
Yeah.
We'll get 10 to 15 centimeters and then we'll get little skiffs. Much easier to deal with. Okay, snow clearing. So we have about 200 kilometers of walk and trails. We do those with our sidewalk crews, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, including the sanding of them. We have all sorts of different equipment that we deal with. We have brooms mounted on our John Deeres. We have plow mounted sidewalk machines. We do hand shoveling, backpack pulling. We'll use walk behind brooms, all kinds of things to get the job done. We like the roads, the sidewalks are done in priority order, and we get on. If we get another storm, we revert back to our priority 1s. So as shown in the previous slide, the park teams moves through their priorities until complete. This team is also responsible for cleaning St. Albert Place, city properties, stairs, bridge sidewalks, bus stops, and bulb outs. So again, anything with snow and ice, we get quite busy, and we got lots to do when it is snowing and after it's snowing. So after a successful pilot of a sidewalk icebreaker last season, we've also purchased our own and really excited to have this in our toolbox. So again, one of our sidewalk machines was up for RMR. We added the icebreaker to it. And we're really excited about using it. We demoed one last year. We hung on to it quite a while. Because it happened to come in at the right time when we were dealing with that majority of the freezing rain, not only the freezing rain events, but the freeze thaw events of the springtime. Again, just like a truck plow, a sidewalk machine here has different attachments. On the left is a B-mounted plow. That's usually good at barreling through thick, heavy snow, kind of just creating a path. And then the broom on a sidewalk machine as well. You'll see these out a lot in the springtime. That's how we clean our boulevards, also with the 72 John Deere brooms as well. This one's more with a straight blade. See the sander unit on the back. The only thing with the sander unit, it hasn't got a very big capacity, those have to be refilled quite often, especially you get conditions like we had last year where you're having to constantly put out a lot of material. That's where the icebreaker is going to come in nicely, even though it's not going to be able to, it's still going to take some time to get to the 200 kilometers of sidewalk that we're responsible for. It's going to take the ice off the sidewalk instead of just sanding it and constantly having to deal with it. These are John Deere brooms. So again, you can see these got our mowing decks on them in the summertime. As you can see on the left-hand side, they come with snow blowers as well. Usually they're a little more robust. So we're not typically doing our sidewalks with these. These are more for our trail systems. When we get drifting, we have the snow blower attachment that we can get a head out on there and get that done. So some of the material we use on the roads and sidewalks, we use chip material, we use ice melt. On the rare occasions, we'll use salt on the sidewalk. We do obviously use it on the road. We also have pickled sand. So what pickled sand is our street sand mixed with salt, basically in the mixing process. And when we stack it, simply to keep it from freezing. And so what that does is that when we go into it, we're loading it into our trucks, it's not clumpy. So that's very important. And then when we talk about mix design based on the temperature, we can add some salt to the sand. We don't like to do that too much on the sand that we're putting on the sidewalks. We'd rather use sand with some chip in it to provide some bite. Too much salt I'd rather mechanically remove the snow, especially off the sidewalk, than to chemically remove it. Okay, now it's time for a little show and tell. So we got I don't know how this is going to display online, Council, but this is our chip material. And this is our street sand, and it's pickled. And this is actually our salt. So this is actually out of the Agrium potash mine, and it's a waste byproduct. So it's actually potassium chloride. That's why it's pink actually. And in the metro region, it's pretty similar. So there's a couple of different types of this. You can see it's pretty coarse. There's a fine mix as well. I'm not a big fan of the fine mix. I tend to, especially in our environment, it tends to blow off the road before it gets impacted. Right. And that sand's got some calcium chloride mixed in with it as it's going up the conveyor. We spray calcium chloride on it, and it's about 1% salt by volume.
Calcium chloride?
Low. What's that?
You said spray calcium chloride?
Yeah, we spray liquid calcium chloride on it. Yeah.
I thought we weren't using calcium chloride.
We don't anti-ice with,
Okay.
we're not using calcium chloride to anti-ice anymore, spraying it on the road directly. We do still use it to mix our material with,
Okay.
because it's very, very little amount, but it doesn't clump this
Yeah.
way. It doesn't freeze, and you have to do that. Because you don't want your sander conveyor clogging up when you need to. And then it also comes in being placed on the road.
Sure.
Especially when it's cold. As the material's going out the back, along the conveyor. It's called pre-wetting. It pre-wets the sand, and then as it's coming out and impacts the surface.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, now, so it doesn't, our sand doesn't spray away. The other thing it does too is when we are using a certain amount of salt, salt's got to have some moisture before it's active. If it doesn't have moisture, it just sits dormant. So if it's just sitting dormant when it's warm enough without any moisture, it's defeating the purpose of having it out there. So it kind of gets that chemical reaction going. So if you look at the chip material, you know, that it's not huge, but you could imagine that in a parking lot. And then a puddle, the puddle's got to be quite deep before that, you know, often the rock chunk stick out, you protrude out of from the ice and traction.
How come you don't use like cedar chips or something?
Cedar chips.
An organic.
Or Miss Vicky's. No, I mean, you could,
Chicken bones.
yeah,
No, just the chips.
there's all there's all kinds of technologies that are coming that we have to explore. I was at a conference recently. The APWA had their snow and ice conference again this spring. And what the heck was it? Snail shells,
Yeah. It's like,
right? So like they were crushed up snail shells.
Did you find dead snails to do this or did you kill the snails?
No, I don't know. There's some snail farms or what, I don't know what they did.
Then what happens to the snails?
Sure, I didn't
Escargot.
look into it. But there's all kinds of things. People use kitty litter
yeah.
on their sidewalks, right? Like there's all
That doesn't
kinds of environmentally friendly alternatives, but and we're going to continue to explore. You know, snow's not going anywhere. That's
And you reuse that, don't you?
we're gonna this year, the chip in the parking lot. We talked a little bit about recycling sand. We don't do that anymore. We can recycle the chip. Now, it's not as simple as picking it up and putting it back in the pile. We can't guarantee how clean that material is. So with sand, it becomes quite dirty. It can sit on the boulevard, it gets swept off the boulevard, it gets contaminated with silts and clays, it gets contaminated with garbage, leaves, organic matter, other organic matter, exactly. Chip in parking lots. I'm going to see we're going to do a little mini pilot this year just to see if we can just take it off, put it back in a screen and see and test it. So that sort of thing. Really, the bottom line is once with the sand, for example, if it's going through multiple cycles of recycling, the fragments get rounded and become like little marbles.
Sure.
The other thing too is when you're talking recycling sand, like Calgary says they're recycling sand, Red Deer says they're recycling sand. They don't use sand like we know it. They're using more of a chip material. And basically they're recycling it just by putting it through a screen. Here, because of the amounts of the clays and the organics and the silts, we need to wash it too to recycle it. Because if you just put it through a screen and then go out and you reuse it in the winter, as soon as moisture is introduced, all that clay and silt is going to come and just make a muddy mess on the road instead of the sand. It's going to defeat the purpose. That can be quite slippery as well.
I just think that the cedar chips will float. If you have them, they'll always go to the top and float.
Yeah,
They won't fall apart.
yeah, they could be slippery though too, right?
Alright.
Not about it, like,
I'm just saying, you
yeah.
can do whatever you want with
I'm
it.
always open to ideas, Council.
All right, well, there's my idea.
I knew this.
And
No,
when you
just-
look at that stuff too, there's always,
But we have extra cedar chips is what I understand. For extra chip, wood, chip. We were doing that, we discussed at the,
Greenlands Waste Peace Park, they had talked about laying down the wood chips.
do they have lots?
Have
Oh, I see.
material. I don't know if there's extra, but
Yeah, I would say.
We need it for the trails, though.
So when you're talking traction on like a sidewalk or road, the difference between the chip and the sand is the size, but it's also the fractured faces. Fractured faces will bite into the ice. Wood chips would be probably more in a scenario that where you're out in a festival. And instead of walking around on like snowy, slushy ice, put out wood chips, and it's like putting them out at the Rainmaker Rodeo in the mud, so that you don't get your boots muddy, you don't go through snow and ice. I don't know how successful it would be, to promote traction per se, but
I was thinking of the trails,
yeah.
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 but you know what, like, I may be completely off my rocker, so it's fine either way. I'm just saying.
Awesome. Okay. Which I keep putting down my mouse, so hopefully you grab the right one. Okay, so as you can see, so sidewalks still, we put the material down. This year, we're gonna be able to come along with the icebreaker. Now, again, keeping in mind, we've got 200 kilometers of sidewalks. We're not gonna be able to get there right away, so we are gonna still have to put some material out there, make it safe until we can get out and use the icebreaker. Okay, one more.
Okay. Talk to Canada on status and if
No,
he's
yeah.
still a representative.
I was, but I don't want to be. Yes, so.
Okay, here's the demo of the icebreaker on the sidewalk machine.
So cute.
Yeah, it's,
Do we, because we got the big yellow guy, but are we getting the little red guy too?
Yeah.
we have the little red guy, yeah.
Where's the after?
Right, coming. He's coming. Coming.
Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah, there you go.
That's
No,
a
that
lot
would be
easier to walk
super
on.
Easy to shovel.
Yeah, and then shovel, yeah.
yeah, it just pulverizes it.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, you could just walk on it. You wouldn't need to clear it.
So how many kilometers could you do a day of that?
That's what we're gonna find out.
Okay.
That's how,
Yeah, that's
why we're recording our information, tracking it.
Sidewalk?
And there's lots of different variables, right? Like how thick is the ice? How dense is the ice? How many freeze thaw cycles has it gone through? All those sorts of things, right? So it's unique. And it's no kind of, but again, that's something that we're gonna track because absolutely if it works and we need more to make our sidewalks safer for our residents so they can get out running and doing activities. We gotta know that, so how long is it gonna take us? If we had freezing rain tomorrow, how long would it take?
Seriously, we have to keep mentioning tomorrow and tonight.
Next week.
No.
Next week on Tuesday when it's
Remember.
in forecast, right?
That's it?
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
Next Tuesday, we're forecasting snow?
Right?
No.
Okay, so see that, Counselor, this is actually ours.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's a little red.
But you can recognize it like it's my child.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got our unit number on it.
How many are you hoping to do? And like, I know you may or may not be able to do it in reality, but are you thinking it'll do like 40 kilometers in a day, or what are you thinking? Like, how fast does that little guy
An 8-hour
move?
shift, it's probably gonna take,
Well, how fast does it drive?
yeah, probably like 5 kilometers an hour. It's probably, we're not gonna be able to like go, that video was pretty fast.
Sure.
I would say, yeah, 20 to 30 kilometers a day,
Okay.
maybe, like per 8-hour shift rather.
Per day, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Now, are you gonna run that like longer than 8 hours or
Yeah,
like?
yeah, that's why we cross-train all our teams. So our teams are on 24/7, starting
This is next week.
next Sunday night at 2300. And those are the kinds of things that we do, right? So that we jump in from one piece of equipment to another when they need to.
Cool.
Yeah.
The forecast looks pretty good.
Or you look at the forecast.
Just depends on which ones.
I have one more question. I don't have a question, how more slides you have, but how many staff do we have working on this? Like, how many staff do snow clearing?
Okay, so on our roads team, we have 30. And on our parks team, we have about 10.
So the whole city's covered in 40 people.
Yes.
And contracts.
And
Actually
contract.
impressive.
And the contract.
Yeah, and contract.
And the contractors.
Yeah, when we're doing certain things like residential plowing, that anytime that we don't have enough people to, supplement our resources, that's where hired equipment comes in.
So do they normally come in for emergencies where they have the big dump, or are they mostly just doing residential snow clearing?
Both.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So typically we don't have I said we only have one grader.
Okay.
So we need 2 to do snow removal on collectors. So I need to
Okay.
do that with hired. That's another reason why I'd like to, that then we don't have to use hired all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Do it with.
Are you done? Is it time for questions?
No, no.
How much more do you have here?
About contract.
Okay.
A little bit more.
Yeah,
I see.
keep going.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so again, just some pictures. Again, we're looking at Perron Street Bridge. This is one of the realities here. We kind of, in snow and ice control, this road or sidewalk, we want to go out there before the snow gets packed down, okay? We don't want that bond of snow and ice with the asphalt happening. Sometimes we don't get there as quickly as we need to be, it gets packed down, and we have to bring in hand crews to kind of scrape it off. The icebreaker is going to help us out with that. Okay, I believe Mayor, you're at a regional meeting today.
Yeah.
So we're talking about regional collaboration, so that's a good segue. So my counterparts in the metro region, I'm talking to them all the time. Trying to come up, we meet.
You
at the end of the
brag
season.
about how good St.
Our
Albert is.
service level.
Good.
How fortunate we are to live here. But no, we try out different things, what's new, what's innovative, what's new, what kind, maybe there's a new material. We're sharing those ideas because I've been in this business 20 years. I don't know everything, right? I'm always open and learning new ideas. We have a bigger group outside of the regional, the metro region. We have the APWA, Northern Alberta Ideas Group. That we usually sit, yeah. It's not the greatest acronym in the world. We try to meet quarterly on that one. So again, we talk not just snow issues, but what's going on. We've had a lot of collaboration, a lot of talk about what to do with our sand. Seeing if anybody else is going to pick up recycling sand, those kinds of things. And then just continue, we have a great relationship with City of Edmonton, the provincial contractors that look after the Henday and the other area highway roads that are in proximity to St. Albert. And Sturgeon and Strathcona County, I'm communicating with them quite frequently on snow and ice control practices. Okay, so we're an hour and 15 in. After a break, we're gonna have a break. Before we do, I've got this short video to show you. I have to figure out how to do the sound on it though. And then we'll take a 5 to 10 minute break after that.
And then what's after that?
A little bit more and then questions.
Okay,
What do we?
because you know I've got like thousands of them already.
But yeah, let's do that.
Take the break now while you're fiddling with the sound.
That's
Sure.
excellent.
Might be a good
Okay, we'll do that.
Cool.
Okay, so we'll be back at
Grand Parade.
Sure.
Grab it.
Do this.
And we're pretty blessed too, just when he talks about his team, that we have seriously experienced people
Yeah.
that run the crews and know how to react in the field on the go.
Cross your fingers or sound.
We got Sean on the case.
Sean.
Welcome to Barrie, Ontario.
No problem.
Located in the heart of one of this nation's most populated snow belts. Today, I will be embedded with an elite force committed to a battle.
Elite force.
Armed with nothing but a giant plow. This is the War on Snow. This is the Mayor of Barrie, Mayor Jeff Lehman. Hello, Mayor Jeff. How are you?
Welcome to Barrie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to join the team, correct?
You are.
Now, you've had what? You've had like a foot of snow. That's not too much.
By Barrie terms, that's a dusting.
But how big is Barrie? What's the population?
Barrie's 145,000 people,
And what do you got to spend on snow clearing?
5 to 6 mil a year.
So it's substantial.
Oh yeah, it is. Well, it's Canada. It snows here.
Explain to me why the graffiti and the cute pictures on the plow.
Yeah, you know, what a great initiative. One of our staff came up with this. They had school kids come and paint the plows. It was a contest. And then we actually put the plows on the routes where the school is. So the kids, when they're walking to school, will see the plow that they painted going around in their neighborhood.
Okay, well, I'm going to get out there.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Try and bring it back in one piece, 007.
This is Mike Loosemore, snowplow operator. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Good. How are you, Rick?
I am excellent. You, sir, I guess you drew the short straw because I'm tagging along with you today.
Apparently so. I didn't have much of a choice.
That's right. All right.
Before we start, do you have a driver's license?
Yes, I do.
DZ?
Class 3.
Do you have a DZ?
What's a DZ? Yes, officer, I have a DZ. I'm good to go. I'll get the passenger seat to start. It's heated. It's good.
Seats, are our seats heated?
The cab heated.
That'd be the worst if you had to do like.
Oh, see? Look at the snow.
That's a lot of snow.
Now listen, I'm not suggesting this is true, but when that plow came around the corner, he said, "Look, buddy, look, blowing the snow out into the road."
Oh, that would never happen. And he would never say that.
He's what he said?
You don't want me to say this on TV, do you? Son of a something anyway, and I don't even know his father. But if I did, Father, don't be pushing it in my driveway.
Sorry about that. I was in the truck too, and I saw the garbage there. I'll get that for you.
Oh, that's okay. I got it.
Now, I was going to get out because I put a shovel aboard the truck, and I was going to get out and shovel you out. Because I saw this lady there, this lovely lady. Teach me how to use a snowblower. I've never used one.
Yeah, you have. You're from Newfoundland.
Dad would never buy one. He's too cheap. Too cheap.
Yep.
Camera guy.
Put it out on the street, isn't it? Oh, look, it's happened. The army has been called into Barrie because of one snow. What's the situation on the ground?
Not too much.
In the war on snow.
A lot of snow. Just on my way to work.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, so you haven't actually been called in.
No, this is actually my house.
Is to give the Canadian Forces the equipment they need. Very good. What kind of model is it? CF-18. Oh, the game. You just stand there. There you go. Nice.
Yeah, he is.
Music for our men and women in uniform.
Carrying the car.
There goes the garbage can.
If my recycling was banged over, I'd say, why didn't the plow go around that?
Yeah.
But now that I'm on this plow, I see that that would be impossible. It would take you 5 times as long.
Yep.
talker.
You can tell he didn't. He was all at home.
All access, but then they said you can't drive the snowplow because of liability and the fact that there's about $40,000 worth of cars on every block, people and children and stuff. But we have an obstacle course here.
That's correct.
Where the only thing that can die are pylons.
We'll put our seatbelts on,
Oh yes, of course.
put it in
Okay, this
drive,
would be fun.
and it's an automatic, so it's just like driving a car. Then away we go. Well, you got through.
I got through. Okay, so I have to pretend that these pylons,
Or whatever you want them to be.
they're cars, they're Audis, they're BMWs. I'm on Bay Street. Can you do donuts in this thing?
You can try. There you go. Get her almost
All I ever want to do is a donut.
Is the car there? That was close.
Came fairly close to that car.
See? And through the pylons, I went as close to him as possible.
I don't know if they
without
want people driving like that.
And yet, what happened? He complained to the city.
Oh.
Okay, that was a little close. I told the bridge, do not take my parking space. Really clear a parking lot. I think we need to leave a note. In a snowplow. Thank you so much.
No problem, Rick. Come back anytime.
I will indeed. Snowplow drivers, true Canadian trail.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna put that video up on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
Wes, have you ever driven a snowplow? You're a bus driver?
He's on.
You're on mute.
We turn the mic.
I have not, but I wouldn't mind trying to do a donut in one of those things. I mean, if Rick Mercer can do it, I mean, we can do it, right?
We could start on Zambonis first.
Yeah, Zamboni would be fun.
That'd be fun too.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yep.
it was a good video.
Yeah, so the reason why I wanted to show that video, I think it's twofold. One, to create a little break in the monotony of my voice, but also to provide some context, right? A little comic relief as well. Now, the reality of the world's snow removal business is that, like, that's not staged. When they're plowing those roads and they're plowing those driveways in like that, that's not staged. I have many, many childhood memories of snow blowers, snow plows completely burying my driveway after I've helped my dad for about 3 hours. And that's the way it is there. I don't know when it started here. It's been as long as I can remember that the expectation's kind of been is to try to keep snow out from the driveway. The reality of that expectation now is that it takes considerably longer to plow snow. And we have to use different pieces of equipment. So when we have the graders come in and do residential, we have we have them with 2 or 3 skid steers to remove the snow from around the driveways and the mailboxes and those kinds of things, right? So that's just the reality of it now. It's going to be very hard. Once you put something into that level, it's very hard to roll it back, right? We can all appreciate that. So that's one of the biggest issues that we've seen, and that's going to be a nice segue that we talk into this next section. Some of the issues that our residents are concerned about that they constantly is not the right word. The more frequent issues that come up through CSRs are one, probably the biggest one is driveways and snow on the driveways and such. So Last year, we had a lot of freezing rain. In fact, we suspended waste collection for the first time ever, and well, first time in anybody's recollection. We also suspended transit service. Now, what was nice about that, it's pouring rain that, can't remember what day it was, November something. It was pouring rain. We had to suspend transit and waste. And then once the rain stopped and we could get out in front of it, we deployed equipment to actually go out and lay chip down in front of our waste trucks and kind of get back. So we were only delayed for a couple hours. Same with the transit service as well. Typical issues we see icy sidewalks, freeze-thaw sanding requests, blocked driveways, sandbox refilling requests, and then drifting and flash freezing. So when you get, that can happen quite often here in terms of, especially in the spring where you get the frost coming out of the ground, this radiant sun hitting it makes the snow wet. And then as the drifting occurs across the open roads, you can get some flash freezing. Again, we will be able to have the icebreaker deal with situations like that too. We haul snow to Edmonton now, since we don't have our own snow dump. A little more distance traveled there, require a couple extra trucks per crew, per shift. The city is growing, including annexation. So again, we're kind of in that medium range now. We're not a small city anymore. And it takes a lot of planning and it takes some good initiative by council's part and good initiative on our part to continue to provide excellent snow and ice control program. Some other things that we deal with internally, street furniture for our utility boxes on our boulevards, signs, light posts, trees, hydrants. The more we have of those things, the more difficult it is to remove snow from the boulevard, and they're basically more obstacles. So again, it takes a little bit more time to get around them. So as we're growing, as we're sprawling out a little bit, annexation, and we take a little longer. We're out in Campbell Industrial Park, as you know, it takes us a little longer to get out to certain areas of the city. We've increased our infrastructure. Our workforce demographic can impact some of our issues. People are less, the generation that's coming up, they're not lazy, but they're less inclined to work overtime, and their work-life balance is important to them. So as a manager, I have to make sure that I'm taking that in consideration when I'm resourcing and that sort of thing. Then we looked at even another issue. We have St. Albert Trail and other the bulb outs. A lot of the pedestrian activated streetlights, they can be difficult to get to. So going back and making sure that those areas are clean and accessible for all our community to be able to do that. Looking at hills during a storm, need constant attention. And then just overall the public perception, as I talked about before with social media and mainstream media. There's lots of opinions that get out there on different chat groups. You know, and like for the most part, like I'll monitor some of that. I feel it's important to get that perspective as well. I don't always listen to it, but it's a nice perspective to have. Like if we can do something or change something operationally to help, you know, maybe there's some truth to what they're seeing, right? So I always keep an open mind and try to adjust operationally for that type of thing. And then just dealing with spring thaw. I mentioned that before, what we do to facilitate melting and so forth, and try to alleviate some of the issues in the springtime, so that it promotes spring coming sooner, which we can all attest to is a good thing. How we manage resident concerns. So we get from another number of different avenues. We got people calling the public works line. We'll get C-click fixes, we'll get web requests, anything that comes in electronically through a C-click fix or Public Works request. We'll get a CSR generated. Now, we can get a lot. We can go from 10 to 20 a day to 100 a day very quickly. Public Operations Admin assesses each call, determines its priority if possible, and then we'll assign the appropriate team lead to deal with. Goal is to inspect every CSR within a 24-hour period. During busy times, it can be very challenging to call back residents. And just some numbers to give you some context on where normal is compared to what an abnormal would be. 2020 to 2021, we had 3,880 related CSRs, and 21 to 22. So this last winter season, that increased to 7,644. So the middle is probably about the average. Again, we had a very seasonable winter the winter before, and then a lot of rain related issues. And that's where we had a lot of calls. It was icy sidewalks, different flavors of the day that kind of hit the bullseye there. Okay, so some of the examples of asset growth that we've had recently. So recent growth was covered off by adding wing plows to our trucks. So we're gaining inventory. Instead of purchasing new trucks, we put some wing plows on 3 of our trucks. That kind of bought us some time till we increased, got a little bit bigger. We grew again. And again, we've got some charter in for some growth equipment here this year. Our Naki transit station, yes, yeah, we gained a bigger transit station going from Village Tree. New development, commercial and residential. Obviously, the city's getting bigger. The neighborhoods are growing, and people are moving back in, moving into new housing, and that seems to be quite strong again. And then annexation. So annexation, the roads that we got are mostly gravel roads and oil mix roads, but it increased our inventory substantially. So you need equipment to deal with that. So in the summertime, it's not only needing a grader, wobbly attachment go with it. As Jay was mentioning earlier, you try to, when you purchase equipment, you want it to have winter and a summer function. Most of our equipment does, other than obviously the snowblower attachment. And then also having a wing attachment for the grader. It allows us to clean the ditches. And when we're out in the country and with drifting, it's very important to make sure that we're pushing some snow back to create a snow break to deal with drifting, but also to keep those ditches open as well. So some of the changes, just within my time here for the last 4 years, we suspended the calcium chloride on for our anti-icing, just basically because of public outcry. It does work. It is an effective product, and it's very effective at keeping the snow and ice from bonding to the asphalt. But it's right now it's suspended as far as we're looking at it. In 2018, 2019, we went to 24/7 hours, 24/7 days a week, shifts from 24/5. So we weren't working on the weekends. Basically, if we had to work on the weekends, we'd cover it off with overtime exclusively. Use of chip material in parking lots. I've explained that already. We covered our sand shed, which has enabled us to reduce the amount of salt we add to the mix to prevent it from freezing, and it keeps the material dry. So as you can imagine, before, where sand piles were out in the elements, snow falling on them, snow would get mixed in with the sand. Well, that sand, or if it rained, last year would have been a real interesting. Where that sand was, you don't want moisture on the road. So it's nice to have nice dry sand. So the amount of moisture, it's out in the elements, and in the sand shed, it's kept dry. The other thing too, when it's wet, it tends to clog up the chute and clogs up, it freezes up against the equipment.
So you wet it after the shoot, because you said.
We still wet, yeah, the pre-wetting, but when it's wet in terms of
Before it gets to the chute.
Yeah, we want a little bit of residual moisture. We don't want it to be soaking wet. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question with 24/7?
Why don't we wait to the end?
I'm just wondering if it costs the same in the end because you aren't paying overtime.
Not exactly. I do have some numbers, but yeah, we can talk about that at the end. In terms of it's again, it's not exactly apples to oranges, but I'll explain why it's a benefit later.
Okay.
We no longer have the sand recycling option. We groom residential roads with ice blades, dealing with ice complaints. I've chatted a little bit about that already as well. And then a lot of, we were looking at communication, our strategies, what we can do. We did the video, use social media. We can use we use the website pretty good too. We can use those things. We can put on workshops like this, and that hopefully it will help. So changes in the upcoming year that we're looking at, obviously mentioned it numerous times already this afternoon, loader and sidewalk machine mounted with icebreakers. We're going to use GIS more to benchmark service levels. So around parking lots and road networks. So we're going to have operators and team leads have the ability to click off road segments and parking lots when they're complete, when they're ready to stack, and how much time they spent there, so that we can better track our metrics. Then we also may change how we plow, remove snow in cul-de-sacs. So currently we're stacking up that big pile in the middle. I've noticed that County of Strathcona, for example, they windrow it and then blow it away. So we may look at doing that too, which would be a little interesting as well. Okay, changes to consider. Implementation of a parking ban, additional snow removal on collectors, and maybe looking at reinstating anti-ice. You know, those are things that we can always consider and going back. Boom. Boom. So thank you very much. And right now we would be happy to answer.
Okay, so Jay, did you say you want to go to West?
Yeah, why don't we accommodate, because Councillor Broadhead has to leave in about 10 minutes. We can jump to his questions first.
Hey, Wes, good.
Well, thanks for that. I actually only have two questions. Great presentation, by the way, very informative. So on slide 11, you talked about the priorities, and you talked about the hills, and you talked about Ray Gibbon and St. Albert Trail. And then, but there are arterials, and then there are arterials, if you know what I'm talking about. So Belrose and Giroux, Hebert, there's these major ones. Is that like a 2A or something like that? Because when the roundabout on Villeneuve Road finally gets finished, the amount of traffic on Villeneuve is significant. And just wondering if what's your intent in relation to these sort of uber arterials, if you will?
Yeah, it's a good point, Councillor. Thank you for the question. It's the reality is within our service level, that 8-hour window, that's a very narrow window. For example, there's within other snow and ice policies in the metro region, you're even looking at a 12 to 16 hour window. What we try to do in terms of our, our arterial is based on road class, but it's also based on the volume of traffic. And you're focusing on the volume of traffic. So absolutely, if an area needs to be hit sooner, it becomes. So Villeneuve Road, for an example, it's interesting you brought up that, because that's actually our pathway from St. Albert Trail right now, because until Ray Gibbon gets built out. So we do at Villeneuve Road when we're going from St. Albert Trail to Ray Gibbon. Now, that being said, we don't want to be deadheading all over the place too, and after a storm, right? So we have a rhyme or reason to how we're navigating throughout the city. So we're going to go do St. Albert Trail, we're going to go across Villeneuve Road, down Ray Gibbon and back, And then, we're hitting that with 4 truck plows. They're doing the offshoots as they go, kind of as they hit McKinney, they hit Dawson, they hit Hebert, and those kinds of things. So it's all kind of a well-oiled machine, but we do definitely take that into consideration, the amount of traffic. And with that, the time of day is also a consideration that we have to do, right? If we're going to go out there in peak PM rush hour, we're going to go out and do St. Albert Trail first at 4:30. If we're leaving the shop at 3:15, we're going to go sit out in traffic just like everyone else. It might be better to head off somewhere else that's going to, have more impact.
Just to add to that, sorry, I'll just say, Councillor brought it. With that as well, long-term planning, we are looking at a satellite yard. And with that would change our cycles. What John's speaking to right now is we want to be as efficient as possible with the right productivity. So that means leaving the shop, we're hitting the right roads at the right time so we can tip that whole cycle. Sort of reprioritizing with our existing system right now makes it tough because then, like you said, you're jumping all over the place and you're not getting a productive system where things are flowing. If we ever do get to that satellite yard where we'd be on the other side of the city, we may break up things a little bit differently so that we can actually be more productive coming out of 2 centers. So it's kind of where we're looking at in the future.
This is about the policy, like we could have conversations about changing the policy, because I'm thinking Boudreaux is as important as St. Albert Trail.
But Boudreaux will typically get hit first anyway, right?
So instead of having priority 1 being St. Albert Trail and Ray Gibbon, could we have priority 1 being the route that you would take? Like,
yes, we could look at that.
and so there would be like a red line in an appendix to the policy that this is the route that we'll do first. Because you wouldn't want it to be snowy like crazy. You get St. Albert Trail done, you just moved over to Boudreaux, and all of a sudden starts snowing again, and you're abandoning Boudreaux. That's what residents would think, is they're going to abandon Boudreaux and go back to St. Albert Trail. So maybe instead of having those roads identified, you would have a route identified in the policy.
The only issue I'll say when you get too prescriptive, like he talked about earlier, we're making so many decisions in the field, right? And when you make yourself so prescriptive, then everyone's expecting this is what you're going to do.
This seems prescriptive to me. It's St. Albert Trail and Ray Gibbon.
That's the 1, 2. Yeah, and that's based on those are our 2 most voluminous roads. But if you look at they're still both 8 hours. The only thing what we're saying there is, and maybe we do look at adding Boudreaux or one of those in where those become priority 1. What that's saying essentially is we're going to do priority 1 and 2 on a normal cycle over and over. If we get those crazy times, we're going to divert back to our high volume areas, right? And we will divert back to Boudreaux if needed, if there's a problem there. But there is a possibility, maybe that's something we could look at, is if we want to add a couple different roads in. It might tweak the timelines on priority 2s.
Take it to 10 hours.
Yeah.
But add a road in or something like that.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then maybe we're looking at the bottom line is that they're all done within 8 hours, and really, we meet that service level on the priority 1s and 2s in particular fairly consistently. So, maybe we want to explore something like a ring, square around the city or whatever the case is, so that people can get east, west, north, south.
Yeah, but I was just gonna, how often do you have to choose between priorities 1 and 2, right? Because they're both working on the same timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually.
Probably very rarely, right?
Very rarely.
Yeah, and when it's really storming out is typically, but then again, Boudreaux as an example is a hill. So we want to, and it's the main road to get to the hospital. So those are all considerations that go into the operational decisions that are being made in the field too, right? So.
That help you, Wes?
Fair enough. Yeah, it does. Just the second question. This is hopefully an easy question. So in slide 34, you talked about our commitment to the annexed area. Did we make a formal commitment to the people in the annexed area around a service level of snow clearing? That would sort of take them priority over the rest of the city?
It actually, no. We actually, our service level for rural roads is actually 24 hours. I believe Sturgeon County's was 72 hours. So our service level exceeds.
All right, let's
Service
change the
level.
policy and go to 72 hours.
Yeah, anyway,
Pardon me?
Sorry,
those
Counselor.
are my two. Yeah, that's fine. Thanks so much. And I really appreciate the information session. That was great. And my apologies for having to leave.
Hey, Wes, yeah,
You're quite welcome.
we're gonna take your street off all clearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So our contract with
Thanks.
Sturgeon County
Have
is
fun.
the same level as what they had before.
I don't actually have a contract with Sturgeon.
Well, no, when we did the annexation agreement.
Felt like we were just
In the
gonna
agreement.
provide them the same level of service they had under the county.
Or better.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to
Better.
give them, yeah, we didn't want to give them a worse level of service.
No, but I'm saying if their levels,
We could increase it though. So in this case, we're able to provide 24-hour,
Do we need to
But-
update our policy on that? Or, sorry, maybe it's a policy, the service levels? Like, does it need to be incorporated into our service levels?
It's already,
It's already there. Okay.
yeah,
That's the question.
I can look it up right at the time. Who are we going to take the next question from?
I just wanted to just give them.
I can jump in. So, I mean,
Counselor-
so, and that's,
Shelley's gonna have it.
Shelley, go ahead. You're right.
Hey there, thank you for the presentation. I just have one question. Do you have the same priority schedule? Like say you're a house in Forest Lawn and you're, on the last of the list. Are you on the last of the list every snowfall or does that change up?
No, we change it up every time, Counselor. We're doing a residential plowing cycle, street sweeping. We certainly, we want to be completely transparent with that we do switch it up. So and it can be from event to event, or it can be, we typically, we've done it, we've been changing it after each event. In the past, they've done it from year to year. But I sort of break up the groups, neighborhoods in thirds, and then kind of invert them and switch them around each time that we go.
Okay, that's good to hear. And just one other question. Last year in Riverside, like I know they had those big windrows there, and I mean, they had barely a single lane for most of the end of the winter last year. So was that left because it was so iced, or why was that the case?
That without knowing exactly the circumstance that you're referring to, there are some areas within Riverside that are still responsibility of the developer to maintain. So if we could chat offline about that, I could get you could see what the issue was, could see where it was at, and I'd be able to tell. That being said, any situation that's going to impact potentially safety, if it's going to impact the movement of our transit system, if someone sees something like that where, the road's narrowed, please let us know about it. Give us a call at 780-459-1557. We'll have a team member look at it. If it needs to be addressed, absolutely, we'll take care of it. That's kind of the over and above things that may not necessarily be within a service level, but those are certainly things that we have to make sure that we don't have dangerous situations out there.
And just to comment on that too, we typically don't take over areas until they've gone through a construction completion certificate with the developer. And the reason being is you get into warranty fights, right? So we don't want to enter in until they've actually been approved by our engineering department for us to take over that inventory, so that we know that we're getting the inventory we've actually asked for. And that's why they'll maintain it until that CCC is done by our engineering department. Typically all of our assets, it's usually FAC, but with snow, just based on safety, we take it over at CCC.
Okay, and sorry, one last thing. You know how you have the low curbs now that you used to have the more defined curbs? So now people can easily drive on the lawn and the boulevards and whatever. Are the graders, is it better for the graders with those type of curbs, or are you doing damage to the concrete at the edge with the graders?
So part of the training, that's a really, really interesting point. Thank you for that. And the reality, I guess, would be is from an operator standpoint, you'd want the consistency. So like a rolled over curve that stays the same. That being, because then they don't have to adjust their plow. If you can imagine, they just put it down and kind of follow along. They don't have to articulate it certain ways. That being said, when hired like we do training within, when hired contractors come in, we make sure that they know that they're responsible for any damages that they cause, that we want them staying off private property. So not getting up on the apron, that sort of thing. And then the expectation is we don't want them to make it summer and winter. So I don't want them up on the driveways or in the gutters and grinding anything that might be gouging the cement. So, but I've been in this business for a while. I see it a lot, but ideally we want to try to minimize it.
The one thing I'll say about that though too is you have to remember when people are in large trucks and large pieces of equipment and you have a foot of snow and there's no real definition between the boulevard and your roadway as you're doing the work. There's occasional times where you're gonna be driving that piece of equipment and you're gonna realize that you're up on the curb. Because really there's no way to tell what's under the snow or where that definition changes because your roadway will curve, your things will be different, right? So we do actually have a landscaping crew as well in the spring that does take all those calls where there is those situations where we've done some damage on a boulevard, et cetera, and they come out and repair the grass at that point.
Okay, and thanks for your diligent work. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mike?
Councillor Killick?
Thank you. Really insightful. A couple of the complaints over last year in particular were around the seniors' homes and handy bus routes not being cleared, and that was the only way that a lot of our seniors had to get out to get groceries, etc. Do they receive any special attention, or are we aware of all those locations that we could provide some special coverage or clearage, I guess?
I would say we are aware of them. My team's aware of them. The sidewalks and stuff, they probably, I'm not sure they get, I wouldn't call it special attention. I would say that when we're, for schools, for example, when, we're kind of waiting for the next storm to hit, we'll go and enhance our service around schools and school drop-off zones. It'd be no different around the hospital. I know that we do some work around the senior center down by the curling rink where we clean that sidewalk. There's a spot between the sidewalk and their parking spots within that parking lot, and where snow accumulates. I know that we go in there and do some cleanup. So I would say, it's probably not a frequent thing, but I would say that when we're looking for areas to enhance capacity for the next storm, those types of scenarios are visited.
And the only thing I guess I'll comment on it too, when you're talking about enhanced service levels, we would have to have a definition of who would qualify for that. And then you're getting into severe expenses of dedicated, right? So if you're having a multiple week or multi-day storm level, right? And you're looking at certain facilities getting an enhanced service level, we would have to have dedicated people to those facilities and to that area. we do respond obviously to complaints. So if there is something where there's a challenge to an area that has lower mobility, an area where people may have a lower mobility, we'll target that and we'll send people out to deal with those situations. But with the tight timelines of our service levels and trying to meet the needs of pretty much everyone in the city, that kind of limits us. It's always a challenge in snow. I do actually get calls sometimes about dedicated snow services for certain areas. It becomes very difficult for a citywide managed system. That's why a lot of times too, you'll see on schools, they'll take care of their own sidewalks in front because they can get there a lot quicker than we can get there. While we're still meeting the existing stuff. There always is options for creating enhanced services. They're quite costly and challenging, just due to the nature and the variables of winter.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I didn't have an answer to that. It's just, a question that frequently came to my attention, at least around some of the how we could help our seniors and their, the special handy buses that they rely on so much, their own, if you will, lodge type traffic. The other one is, are our vehicles, snow plows, snow trucks, are they all GPS located so that we can actually factually advise a resident that, hey, our trucks were there yesterday or the day before? Again, I hear these, take them as anecdotal comments, and yet
all our trucks, all our equipment have ABL. So and that's exactly what we use it for. So if a resident is called in, maybe they're claiming that our truck was driving a little bit too fast or didn't come or any of those things. It's more from a liability risk management point of view that we use them for. We also use it for for their safety, the safety of our team. So that they're out there. But they're all located on ABL, and we can track, and there's certain things that we can do and check their speed and stops and how long they were stopped for and that kind of thing. That being said, there's the technology is getting a little bit better too. It's kind of been in the industry right now to be looking at things like plow up, plow down, how much, when the sander's on, when the sander's off, those kinds of things. The proximity sensors, because the amount of sand that we use, they're a little finicky. So it's not always reliable. So we're still working on how we can incorporate that into, what we're actually doing and when. But the technology is getting better and better every year.
Yeah, that's great. Main question was that we can factually provide evidence to residents. I don't think they'd be interested whether the blade was up or down or the sand was coming out or not. It was just, yes, we were there 2 days ago and we did plow your street, even though they may not have been there to see it, shall we say. I think that's having that factual comment with the resident is important. The other two questions are kind of minor, really, but we had a lot of complaints about mailboxes, not access to mailboxes not being cleared after we had done the actual plowing of the streets, the residential streets. We piled up snow and blocked mailboxes. I had a lot of comments around that. Is that our responsibility, or is that something that we do out of a courtesy? And I'm assuming it would probably be a lower priority, but hopefully it's something that is part of our overall service delivery.
Yeah, the truthful answer there is probably a little bit of both. If there's a hard surface walkway there that Canada Post has installed, it's actually their responsibility to maintain that, because they're the property owner of that sidewalk. when we're talking on collector roadways, when we're talking windrows and plowing on collector roadways, it's very difficult to maneuver the snow around with a front mount plow, as you saw in the Rick Mercer video, and that's one of the reasons why I showed it. When we are doing a snow removal, though, however, when hired graders come in, we do let them know that with the preference would be not to have, like, leave a path to the super mailbox, because the reality is that residents want to park, go to the super mailbox, and then go drive home. Some of those super mailboxes are a little further away. So again, that's kind of a thing that we try to do when we go out and you know, they're not make work projects, but they're actually work that can be done when we're not dealing with the snow at hand during a snowstorm. And again, like anything else, there's some mailboxes that are worse than others, right? So you know, we know about those as well. You get to know them and that sort of thing. But ideally, depending on where it is too on the block, if it's actually close, you know, Canada's post would be that you would if there's not a sidewalk there from the road, they want you using the sidewalk and access it from the corner. And then that we keep those clear for sure. Those are to be kept clear at all times, just so we don't really have a service level. The boulevard is for snow. If we can avoid having too much snow there, we try to do that.
Okay. And this one will probably be for Louise, but I think there's a misconception, or I'm not sure what the word is, but when we pile the snow up on the boulevard against the trunks of the trees, I've heard comments that, you know, that causes the bark on the tree to freeze unnaturally, and it killed my tree, or something like that. Is that even remotely true or correct? Or I don't know what the word is, but
I'm gonna let our tree expert.
Yeah, so the short answer is no. The only thing that will really kill the tree in winter is when the grader or the plow, when they're trying to actually clear the boulevard, takes the tree out. That's the damage that's caused. And our guys, when they're asked to clear the boulevards, really do try and get every snowflake off that they can, and they do sometimes get close, and we do have conversations with them. They totally recognize it, and they report it when they can. And the tree guys make sure that the branches are pruned well enough away to allow this equipment to get in there. But by the time that we actually have snowfall, typically the tree's already entered dormancy. The ground is starting to freeze or has frozen ideally. And so once you start piling the snow up there, it's not any detriment to the tree as it stands like that in the winter. As it starts to melt, you do want to actually clear it away, because you do want the tree to now to breathe and recognize that it's spring or summer and it should actually start to grow again. Part of the reason also for clearing the snow is you allow that ground to thaw, which allows the roots to actually uptake water. Because if the ground stays frozen and the leaves are trying to bud out, that's a tremendous stressor on the tree and can impact the tree's ability to grow again in the future. So, you know, removing the snow does a number of things in order to assist the tree, but just piling the snow in the middle of winter isn't a detriment. It's how it comes off.
Okay. Thanks for dispelling that rumor or misconception that's out there, Louise. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I'll be quick. You mentioned contractors numerous times, and also NACI. So just, I don't know what slide number it was, but so the road, Campbell Road to NACI, that's up to Edmonton to maintain, or does a contractor maintain that?
No, it's City of Edmonton roadway.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, sometimes I think in the past when we had the ice and snow events, the road, they don't have the same kind of commitment to that area, do they?
It's twofold. I mean, we have a more enhanced service level for a road like that. I think a lot of the issue that it created, there was there was an unintentional circumstance coming off the sidewalk of a snow being piled up, and it happened to be in the road. It had froze, and then they didn't realize it either. It was it was into the turning lane.
Mhm.
I think that kind of highlighted some of the issues there. Now, that being said, yeah, I mean, it's something, when it happens and there's issues there, I try to communicate with my counterpart in the Northwest District of the City of Edmonton to try to get some
But there's no
attention.
I mean, that's pretty much all we're related to. We don't have an agreement with the city of Edmonton that they will, I'm not saying maybe make it a high priority, but I mean, certainly it's our buses that go into Naki. And if St. Albert Trail and Campbell Road are not maintained, then it's our buses that are delayed.
And we have problems with sand there too, right? Getting out of Naki, a little bit of an incline. Yeah, we can't go too far. When we don't have service agreements for an enhanced level of service. What we do have though is where we have our borders.
Right.
We do have maintenance agreements, like they're usually just over coffee. Your operators are going to do this. We'll go to here, like on Campbell Road, for example. The provincial contractor used to come right up to Pedro.
That was my next question.
Right. Now they come up to logistics turnaround at the light, and we're responsible just because there's another intersection there. So we will coordinate those types of things. We can't say, no, you have to provide better service to it. Unfortunately, everything else.
So
pushing the matter.
So could the contract, I mean, because the contractor also used to, if my recollection is right, the contractor, Chandros, would go from Anthony Henday all the way on Campbell Road as well. And they don't do that anymore. So that must have been something that they changed with the city of Edmonton, perhaps.
I believe so, yeah.
I mean, I can't swear. I'm just was wondering whether there was some benefit to having that. We would have to work with 3 parties. We would have to potentially have the contractor, but because I mean, where we make the left-hand turn off of St. Albert Trail to go on to Campbell, that road gets, I don't know, St. Albert Trail doesn't seem to have the same priority for Edmonton. Seems like once you're past 137th Avenue, you get pretty clean. Anyways, it would be just something I think we need to maybe be alive at. I mean, if we get some transit issues.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The other thing that we talk about in those maintenance agreements and collaboration between who's who, what we don't want is what you just alluded to in terms of like you kind of get to the boundary and you have a snow wall.
Yeah.
We want seamless transitions between the different entities of who's doing what. Because certainly if you're maintaining a road where you can go 70 kilometers an hour and all of a sudden doing 40 isn't safe, that's not a good thing for a
Well, I'm just thinking about our buses ourselves. I mean, our buses we prioritize for not only St. Albert Trail and Ray Gibbon for our volume of traffic, but we also worry about our buses, our transit zones.
Just speak to that a little bit too, because I deal with the bus stuff as well.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll caution is getting into a system where we're working in Edmonton. Number one, it's going to impact his ability to meet our service.
That's why I threw the contract.
Yeah, and the issue with the contractors, then it limits what contractors you can bring in because you need a contractor that's certified to work in a roadway, right? Or not certified, but has the abilities and the equipment to manage in a roadway and meet what Edmonton wants. And then you get into damage issues and all that kind of stuff, right? So,
there's logistical issues, but I'm just talking about the fact is, we moved our bus out
into Edmonton.
We built their LRT terminal.
Yeah, and well, that's probably a better way to say it. But I mean, if we hit the snow wall at St. Albert Trail and the other side of Anthony Henday or Campbell at the other side of Henday, That's much good.
Ideally, it's, I mean, with his relationships, it's working with Edmonton and in Edmonton's defense too. This is all new for them too, right? They've done that system with their people for the last 50 years with nothing there, right?
Yeah.
And so they're making adjustments too on the fly. So we'll continue working with Edmonton.
No, and I'm
situation, but
only raising it because it's.
yeah, it's no,
I see.
issues.
Just two other quick questions. Well, one other quick question. So when you've got these project charters coming forward to us in relation to equipment. If it's proved, how long does it take to get the equipment now? Because that could be a while.
Depends on the equipment, to be honest. I'd be speculating. Typically, like a grader is a little more common. Typically, it's not a great turnaround.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the agreement with Sturgeon. So I mean, we're not going to get it before the winter, right? If we only have one grader, then we have to depend on either contractors or Sturgeon County
or partners.
Our partners, yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to get it like from our if it is, or from a growth perspective, if it gets approved, we can't order it till Jan 1 anyway.
Yeah,
Anyway.
exactly. So you're not going to have it for this winter anyway.
Yeah, but like you said, it's variable. I mean, when we put out our tenders, it's for an example, we had a bunch of trucks this year that we got way late because no one had chips. Same with our rentals, all of our leasings.
Yeah.
We were way late because of all that kind of challenge. So the international market affects us, but like you said, there is certain pieces of equipment that are easier than some of the specialized stuff. So, but as soon as we get the approval, then our fleet manager is out there getting all that tenders out as quickly as possible while we're still meeting our purchasing guidelines. So,
the last, did you add?
Yeah, and just one other thing too is like, the market is the way it's been like for the last year and a half. We're trying to be proactive in our ask as well. Right?
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, I understood. That's why I answered my question. Last one is more of a hot potato one. Calcium chloride. Yeah, well, you were a referee and you said you try to take all perspectives into account. So, I mean, we had a project. We know Edmonton really went all in on calcium chloride for a while, and then now they backed off. And I think they only have it in a few areas. Groat Road.
They're not using it.
They're not using it at all. So, I mean, like the pros and cons of it?
Pros to me, like, again, it's kind of a loaded question. It can be like the hot potato-ness of it.
That's what I mean.
It's more a it goes back to really having a good stock toolbox and using the appropriate tool at the appropriate time. Calcium or any liquid can be very effective. So there's different types of liquid as well.
That's how I was going to. Calgary uses beet juice or sort of, or maybe they do.
And Leduc did a pilot with beet juice. It's been rumored that, and it's proprietary, but in the calcium chloride, one of the manufacturers, calcium chloride, beet juice and molasses is the corrosion inhibitor that they add to it. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. I haven't done the chemistry on it. But the reality of it is if you can prevent snow and ice from bonding to the asphalt, you're going to be able to remove that quicker. Now that's what anti-icing does. In our climate, my opinion, it would be never to use liquids to de-ice. It's just not, that doesn't make sense to me. We're in a very cold environment where we can go from +15 to -35 in a very short period of time. When you create water, it can be a very dangerous situation. The anti-icing, typically, let's use St. Albert Trail, for example. It did prevent that bond from forming. The other thing that we found that it cleaned up the residual snow quicker. So between the lanes, I know it's only been a couple of years. Last year wasn't a great example. It did tend to look less snowy and icy, but like anything. So yes, valuable tool. The cons of it, yeah, you know, if you don't have the corrosion inhibitor, it can be 35% more corrosive than sodium chloride.
No, I understand some of that. That's pros and cons of it, but doesn't the contractor use it on Anthony?
They do.
There's still two of the contractors of the three are still using anti-icing.
Yeah.
Wash your car free.
And de-icing too.
Yeah, no, just so you can just see the difference. And I think one of the residents, you know, that's what they notice. They say, well, Anthony Henday is completely dry. And
there's a couple things though too. That's not just anti-icing, right? So if you have a highway.
Yeah, you've got highway speeds. Yeah.
No stopping, no developing of ice, all that kind of stuff. Stopping's the worst thing we have.
Yeah.
That's why Santa Trail takes a beating, is because we have stop lights every 20 minutes. Then you have all the condensation come out of the back of the vehicle.
Yeah.
But like John said, though, anti-icing is fantastic. I was here when we first started using it.
Yeah.
But it's still a tool. I mean, Minnesota uses it, the DOT down there extensively, same with Alaska. But only in certain periods. It's not effective once you get down past the eutectic point. And that's, so some of that perception gets people riled up too. Well, why is it icy today? Well, because it's minus 28, right? It's 28. But so but it is, in my opinion, it was from someone who used to commute from St. Albert and Edmonton all the time. I used to, every first snowfall, I would stop at the Socrates and I'd be stuck there for an hour, right? And the first couple of years when the first year they used it was the first year before I came to the city, and it was a noticeable difference the first time. So, but there's a perception, and like he said, the issues with people and you put risk to the city because they're saying it's eroding their concrete, etc. Some of the studies in the States have shown that in certain ways it's actually better for the environment, because once it's bonded, then you're having to hammer it with salt to try to debond, right? And so by doing that a little bit at the front end, you're not doing the back end. But every situation is different, so those analytics those holes could be pulled.
Remember the winter of 2013, 14?
I probably do.
We had very similar circumstance to what we have today. So warm fall, and then we got dumped on.
Yeah,
Are
January.
you trying to depress me right now?
Then we love snow. No, we got dumped on. Huge blanket, ground warm, water underneath. It freezes it. And then it got cold, and it got cold for a long time. And this was a mid-November thing, and we couldn't get that ice off, like everywhere. Like
Now you will be able to.
Albert, Edmonton, everywhere was with the icebreaker. Absolutely, we'll be able to do that. But if we had anti-ice, that would have prevented that from forming.
Yeah.
Right. So
I mean,
that's where it's advantageous.
Yeah, so I mean, in the decision you keep talking about the toolbox. I mean, if the toolbox allows you to use it, you could use it if you thought it was necessary.
Absolutely.
There's nothing in policy or that says
Preventing
you're
you.
not allowed.
So the only risk I'll say is if we do start using it and our partners aren't using it in the region, and there's still that perception of the rust and all that kind of stuff, it opens us up to criticism and claims, et cetera, that may or may not be warranted. But I mean, I have my own.
Have we ever done this? I mean, and this might be an IR, not you would, but have we ever done a study of, did that actually increase the amount of claims to the city over what we would see in a normal year? Because salt theoretically does it as well.
Yeah. We could ask our insurance company. I don't remember a ton at that time.
I don't ever remember in my 20 years, I've never received a claim for corrosion.
Yeah. In Edmonton.
I mean, there are maybe the perception that there's environmental factors into the river as well, right? But then we have salt and grit and other things. Okay. Anyways,
Perception wise, it's funny because people struggle to get out of their residential street, and then they drive into Edmonton, and they only drive on the arterials in Edmonton. And then they say, oh, the roads in Edmonton are so much better in St. Albert.
But they don't drive in the residential.
But they don't go down their residential.
I know.
Okay, so I have a bunch.
Sure.
I'm trying to put them in three buckets. Some of them are policy related, some of them are PR related, and some of them are for my own interests. So I'll keep my own interest. Maybe you guys can stick around later. But one that's more for interest, but maybe important. So January 20th last year, Kevin Scoble pulled the trigger to do a full residential clearing. And I know he and I were talking frequently about it, and we were just starting to get pissed off with the residents. It was getting out of control. And we were close to the threshold. I don't even know if we made the threshold. Do you guys remember?
Like 2 years ago?
No, last year.
January 20th of 22.
Yeah. So that was the second one we did last.
Second one?
Because we did 2 last year. So I guess I've got you two here. Like within days, I think probably by the time the 10-day cycle of the residential clearing happened, it was plus 10.
Yeah.
I'm like, what a waste of 500 grand.
But it wasn't.
Okay, that's my question. So
Yeah,
was it a
so-
waste of money?
So I guess I'll speak, then John can talk about the operational side of it too, but so the decision making, so the policy states there's a mobility clause in there too, right? So the issue that, and why John recommended it last year, and we were actually really, I think as an average, we were like millimeters away from it.
Yeah, it was like.
Areas we were at the threshold, but due to the mobility, and that's where John was coming out and saying, if we don't do this and we get that massive surge of heat, snow does this, it goes, right? And then you end up with ruts. Well, not that fast, but it turns, it essentially expands.
It gets slushy.
Slushes.
Yeah, okay.
And so then it freezes again. So if we wouldn't have done that residential clear, so John's sitting there going, if we don't do the residential clear and it does do that, we're gonna get mobility issues for everyone trying to walk, plus their vehicles.
Okay.
And then if it freezes again, then we're in
So you
no
thought it was
trouble.
a good use?
Oh, it was, yeah,
So that we budget for 1 year.
correct.
So we're done.
At it.
I thought we bumped it to 2.
No, that was repealed.
We took it back?
It's only been one since in my time.
It was 2 for about 3 years, I believe.
So we cannot. We can,
But
we're
they-
clearing this November, December. I mean, we can.
We can,
Yeah, we'll have to just find money.
just, it worked.
It'll come out of surplus or something.
Yeah, so
Stabilization.
So I'm somewhat fiscally conservative. I wouldn't say cheap, but I definitely, when I'm making recommendations to do something, it's not just because.
Yeah.
And then I look at things like the budget has an impact, but the reality of being in this business is that there's always going to be money for snow because it's can be public safety.
Okay. And honestly, the question, I just remember Kevin and I talking so much about it, and I felt like it was his decision because we were just getting frustrated with the residents, even though we both didn't think we should do it. But I didn't know that you guys were also recommending it, so that's just good to know. That was more for my interest. Okay, policy questions. When you look up municipal policies around the region or around the world, are they all generally based on the amount of snowfall and then time to clear? Or are there other factors, measurements in snow policies? And I can't even think what that might be, but.
No, I would say
Or
that
generally that.
the only thing that's different in and around the region, in terms of like Edmonton as an example, they have a sanding frequency within their policy.
Okay.
The metro region, Northern Alberta, is very unique. It's the only place in the world really that puts abrasives, the same type sand as an abrasive regularly.
So my next question is, has complete streets and more active transportation focus changed the way you clear? And should it be in our policy to reflect that we, even as a value statement, that we are encouraging the bikes in the winter and that kind of stuff? I don't know, because the complete streets has been approved since the policy was approved.
Yeah, complete streets had our input in it, like from the start. So there are things that, in any design, there are things that are going to impact operations. We like to try to bring those issues, those impacts to the design, to the designers, so that we're upfront with it. The bottom line is that, if they build it a certain way, it's our responsibility to maintain it, right?
I'm just wondering if there's something that we should be reflecting in the snow policy, snow clearing.
I mean, there's nothing in there that's prohibiting me from doing things right now. So, I mean, that's good. Like, it doesn't, in the snow policy currently, it doesn't talk about what the service level is around bulb outs or anything like that, right? Like but it's also not tying my hands on things too. So-
Lisa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so the bulb outs in particular, while they're not referenced in our policy in particular, what they do, we have to do them with the hand route, which is the same guys that are doing the bus stops. But what we found is by about 80% of them, by the time we get there, the residents that are adjacent to those have actually already cleared them for us because they recognize that or take ownership of it around them. With the rest of the trail system, in regards to bikes and wheelchair access has come up in the past as well. The only part of the Red Willow Trail system that gets actually swept down to bare pavement is that area in and around St. Albert Place. The rest of it is done with the plow, and the drawback to the plow is that you will never likely get down to actual ground level because it's always either going to be wavy, or if it's on concrete, there's breaks in the concrete. So it tends to leave a little bit. And so we see we do get some complaints in regards to mobility issues on those areas that are outside of P1. So short of sort of increasing the service level to the other parts of the trail system to be that brush to broom, we're always going to have those issues where it can't always be 100% wheelchair or bike access at all times of the winter.
And there is limitations too with some of the active transportation areas we go into, with the sidewalk as well as adjacent infrastructure, right? When you're blowing snow, you're not just blowing the snow, you're blowing the grit and everything. And so you don't want to have that kind of system up against in a super nice house or whatever the case may be. That's where the plow is more effective. It does leave the skiff, but it puts the snow where it's got to go versus just sort of, aggressively spraying it away.
You've talked a couple times, but again, it's more of a value statement, and it's not in the policy, about the desire to mechanically remove snow before we use chemicals. I know I'll get complaints from residents about just put more salt down.
Yeah.
And I explain to them very politely, sometimes not so politely, how bad salt is for the river and not so much cars, but St. Albert residents are so focused on the environment and they don't realize it. And as soon as I say that, they're like, oh, now I get it. Please don't put salt down. And then I'll say, and please just buy winter tires.
Yes.
Winter tires. We should make that a law. St. Albert, Quebec.
Go back to it.
Anyway,
Has that too.
so an honest conversation with a resident about the damage that salt can do to the river and et cetera does go a long way. So I'm just wondering if our policy should maybe reflect that somehow as a value statement. And are we talking, were we doing the policy? Is that what we're doing in this workshop?
We regularly.
Maybe for future.
Constantly updated.
Yeah.
Consideration of the policy, just
Not a specific effort.
noted.
Only if needed.
And I'd say they'd have to be more from an information standpoint, because the risk too is, like you said, public safety is a priority. So there's always that battle. And we don't want to, again, if there's a necessity, we would do it. But John, from an operational standpoint, is always looking at ways to, like you said, he targets certain areas and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We could say that that's our best practice.
Yeah.
And
I never thought about it until I heard John say
Yeah.
at least twice today that this is your preference is to mechanically remove.
Yep, no, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and it's just, it's not about, it's not about being a radical. It's the reality of it is, the other thing too is salt's getting expensive. With the price of fuel right now, we have to get it. Like it's gone up $40 a ton since I've been here.
How much is it a ton?
How much is a ton of salt to purchase? It's roughly $110 a ton.
No, when you had
So it was like 70 and now it's 110.
Yeah.
That's like a 50% increase.
Right?
Fuel.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the main cost, right? 'Cause it's a
Yeah, that's-
byproduct.
Yeah, and the carbon tax, on the carbon tax that's added to it and all that too, so.
So it's more than that really after it's all said and done.
Yeah.
That's just the purchase price, not the delivery price.
All right, I only have,
The solar price.
I've got two more for you guys, and you said Nicole's online?
Yep.
Okay, I got two.
Was.
I got two more for you guys, and they're big. The parking bans, we haven't talked about that. So was it Leduc that just started doing that?
Yes.
I said council, so I've always wanted to do this. Kevin was resistant. But again, I've got you two here. You've got experience. What do you think?
For St. Albert,
Yeah.
I recommend not a full-blown parking ban.
No, like,
We have a couple problematic areas that are difficult, and it's not so much.
Give me my crescent, we just wait.
well, no, you would never do it on a crescent or a place. It would only be like on bus routes and stuff like
Right,
that,
so,
right?
so on our collector now, so what has to happen with a parking ban is usually you have to give a certain amount of notice in order to write a citation for the park.
And tow them.
Give them and tow them. And then that's another issue, so this has been, in my 20 years, this has been, the one thing that comes up regularly.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, what happens with towing companies, there's not a lot of towing companies that have the equipment in order to, move vehicles around that quickly. Like you would have, like Jay was explaining before, with you have to pay to have that service level, so that immediate response, that kind of thing. So that doesn't mean that it's not possible. For sure it is.
We could just.
There's been a general consensus amongst the tow truck operators in the metro area that they won't remove vehicles that have a windrow of snow around them because they don't want to damage.
So how do they do it in Edmonton and Leduc?
They don't.
They don't tow.
They don't ticket. You don't.
Oh, ticket's good.
Ticket.
Yeah.
Leduc, the one thing about Leduc's parking ban, I like the fact that it's a $250 fine. So this is my experience with parking bans. So on a collector roadway, you're the only time that, for the most part, you get cooperation if they know you're coming. So communication, putting street signage out, like people.
The problem is sometimes you get ahead of the schedule.
Yeah.
And you're ahead of the streets get like, which is good, I guess.
So,
but there's no warning.
Now that, okay, how do I keep this on track? Now, if that's exactly the reason why I don't support a full-blown parking ban. 24 hours notice, our service level on a collector is what?
Oh my God, they're quizzing us now.
Well,
Yeah. That was it.
Eight.
I said it.
on an arterial,
16.
16, right?
8 on arterials.
16 on the collector. So we put in a parking ban. By the time we get to it gets implemented, we're done.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we could do it on a snow removal. When we're blowing the snow away, it would come in. The reality is we don't see, by the time we get to snow removal, as long as they know we're coming and by posting it on the website and that sort of thing, we don't see a lot of vehicles because people want the snow off their road to have a nice clean parking spot. So they move them. The only areas that we see in the city that are problematic are areas like Galarno, which is over behind Tudor Glen, right? Like the St. Vital up by the seniors home, Element Drive, which is up behind the Costco. So, and Aaron Ridge Road by the hospital.
Okay.
Or on other collectors and those are the only ones. The reason why, apartment buildings, workspaces. Those are the only times that we see issues that our operators have issues with.
Just bury them.
The way we deal with those is we go out and we put up A-frame signs. Our afternoon crew will do it, and then the next night, because we're giving 24-hour notice, we'll also, for the hospital, for example, we'll run in with a bulletin so they can distribute it amongst their teams and staff. And then we go in there and remove stuff. So in general, it's difficult. Now, if you implement a parking ban, now I have to wait to start as well. So you say, and then if I do go start, even if I just go and I need to tidy up something, oh, you said you were starting in 24 hours, right? So it becomes very polarizing very quickly too. Now, the reality on a collector in front of an apartment building, for example, is that you typically, if you own a condo, you pay for the one stall and then you can rent another stall if you have two vehicles, or you can park on the road. Paying for that second stall, maybe it's $100 a month. You run the risk parking on the road. Maybe you get a ticket, depending what the fine is. In Edmonton, I believe it's $125. You may get a parking ban instituted 4 or 5 times a year. Even if you've got a parking ticket every time without being towed away, it's still cheaper than as if you rent a stall the whole winter.
Doesn't want it.
No, I get it. So I'm still not convinced, but we only have 15 minutes left today, so I'm not going to solve this.
Can I just say one thing about Matt? So like he talked about, so John does do, so when we are doing collective clears, residential clears, we typically, there is times in certain areas, but typically he manages where he'll send people back while they're still in the area, right? When we're doing, because our plow system doesn't really get impacted by cars the same way that our clearing system does. So a plow is driving right past it and kind of push the snow into it. But we don't in St. Albert, because of history, we don't actually plow driveways in as much as some other locations. So we're not going as close to the curb there. But then on the residential side too, when you talked about us being ahead, a lot of times we're not ahead. It's the fact that we've got garbage. So the collectors and residentials, everything's front garbage for the most part in St. Albert. And so that's why we're jumping, is because all of a sudden garbage day, and that becomes a priority. So now we've got to evict our people, not evict, but send our crews to the next subdivision for a day to allow that activity to happen.
So even though you have a cycle where you do Oakmont, Forest Lawn, sometimes you're going to do Oakmont.
And we'll say that at the bottom of that, we'll say this isn't based on other services. We may have to jump. We'll always return back to that schedule once we're through there. There is areas in St. Albert that we do, like downtown clear. It does impact us for a clear. We'd have to review from an analytics standpoint if it's, we'd have to work with a lot of other departments that would be impacted by that to see how much resources they have, et cetera.
So you guys most know, like, we're going to get a question within the first snowfall of
parking bans. Yeah.
So if Nicole's online,
maybe we sell
a page on our website of the pros and cons of parking bans. Simple. And the biggest con would be if we do it, you might get slower service because you have to wait that 20 minutes. Simple as that. But I'm not even saying it correctly. You guys could probably craft the messaging a little bit better, and then we could just refer them over there. And there's a street in Grandin, it's either Grosvenor or Grandin, that they Facebook message me every freaking winter about parking bans. So I don't know if that's one of them that's on your list. Okay, Nicole, you said you're here. I feel like we need to do a better job, honestly, of the public relations with snow clearing in the city. I saw, I can't even remember what city it was, but they got a new plow or grader. I remember what it was. And they had a community naming contest for the new piece of equipment.
Yeah, we can do that.
And I think it's fun. Like, I think just getting the community more involved with it. And then another community has GPS tracking on all of their equipment. And so you could actually go onto the website and see where the plows and graders and stuff are in the city. I don't know how hard that would be, but if you're already doing a GPS tracking on it. So honestly, I would go look where the graders and plows
AVL,
are.
I don't know whether you could do it on, it depends, I know on transit you could do it, but AVL on,
I don't know.
On ours, I don't know what you would have to.
We could take it away, look at it, discuss it.
Track a plow.
Well, we have to look at safety and privacy too, right? Our operators.
Our union agreement.
But okay, the only reason I came up with it is somebody else is doing it. So,
it's same thing.
And you would have so many contractors that wouldn't have.
That's true.
They don't have that.
They don't have it.
But I think philosophically, we understand community engagement. People interact.
My last point on that was need more video.
Yeah.
Honestly, the video that
And we are working on
about the before and after of the sidewalk crusher. That'd be fun. And then get council involved, make it fun, get this new city manager driving a plow. Have Wes and Mike and Ken race, like anything like that.
Race.
And then, and if you don't mind, get in front of the camera and explain
Yeah,
I don't mind.
every day. Like, this is why we made the decision to skip Brayside, because it's garbage day, so we'll be
hand out
back
tickets.
tomorrow. It's easy.
and we did talk about that last year because we had real success last year with one of our outdoor arena workers. And they interviewed him and talked, it was really well done and stuff like that. And the responses we got back, that one and the snowplows going down the road, got really good feedback on our social media. But that's one of the things that we're trying to get to is more people understanding the face that there's people doing this work, right?
Yeah.
And we've had some really sad incidents that have happened to some of our members, and so that's one of the things that, you know, John and Derek, Derek's the supervisor, Derek Gallardo, are working on, is trying to get a little bit more of that, and Nicole's got some great ideas on that too. So 100%, yeah.
And now that COVID's over,
That was a challenge.
you know, that was another thing challenging.
Yeah.
So we really got through it unscathed in terms of our department without impacting service.
Yeah.
Those are absolutely things that we could look at doing.
That's just
Exciting.
Yep, 100%.
Name all, hey, there's Pete the Plow.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, and it's the biggest one of the day.
Okay.
Next year, Bill's gonna make us cut service levels to get a better tax.
I'm just gonna facilitate a discussion.
It's gonna make us. Again, we have you two here as experts in snow. Is there any opportunities or areas for service reductions in Snow Creek? Whether it's parking lots or downtown or.
We would have to look at,
These timeframes.
Yeah.
I mean, it would,
We're pretty proud of the level of service. we
Yeah.
deliver, and you get it all the time. In Texas, we want the best, and I want to keep it the best, but
yeah.
you guys are day to day.
Could have been dangerous.
So the only thing, a comment I'll say about that, so the MJ has some definitions about public safety, right? So the roadways have to be reasonably safe. It doesn't really provide a definition on that, but it's going to be very tough. You'd have to look at areas that aren't high traffic. You're getting a lot of backlash. So we get enough backlash on snow as it is.
Oh, yeah, I know. Look at the grass cutting, like.
Yeah.
It's just-
And if you look at our cost per. You have a good-
Please don't look at the grass cutting.
But it,
The last couple of months.
like in the end, that 2-day change in grass cutting was such a good example of a service level reduction.
Yeah.
We can point to that council has to experience, yeah, it's minor, but council had to experience the complaints
Yeah.
and.
I'll say out of all the services that are part of the public operations realm, snow, Louise will probably slap me here because I'll say trees and grass. But snow is, it has a safety risk. It has the most variables involved because every day is a different thing, right? And knowing, like you saw what happened just removing grass for 2 days and what ended up happening with the grass and the weeds. And then even once it stopped growing the grass, now we're getting the weed issues because we're not going on that same cycle again. The risk of snow, if we ended up with a nasty winter and we had reduced services.
Oh, I'm not looking forward to going there. I'm just.
Yeah, just, I'll put my,
But we will do a service level review essentially.
100%.
And be able to articulate why we would recommend or not.
Yeah.
Right, in some
You said
instances,
that
touching
40
some.
hours and most municipalities are
Yep.
16, right?
The reality though with that though, even at that, is that it's still gonna be done. We're gonna take longer to do it. So
Same
like,
cost though?
yeah, basically, right? Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's.
But is there really a big cost between that 8 and 16?
That's what.
Well, the hard thing is it's not linear, right?
There isn't.
You're still running full people, you're still running full equipment. And
All you're doing is dealing with the clock.
correct.
Yeah, the realities come in when we're looking at like residential plowing, for example, right? Like hired equipment costs a lot of money fast, right? So, you know, those types of things.
So the nice thing about our 8-hour commitment is we can get our contractors faster than other
I feel like we
municipalities.
always have a good.
Right, yeah.
Well, I mean, but
We've got good relationships with
Yeah.
a lot of our contractors.
Yeah.
Shelley?
Just one quick question, if there's any savings to be had storing the snow in St. Albert again rather than Edmonton?
Well, I'll speak to that. So the issue with the current system or the previous system was it was a temporary site that was agreed to for a period of time by the province. We'd have to reapply and we wouldn't get it. Is there benefits? Yes. We not having trucks going all that thing. But the problem is it has to be an engineered site. Province now has regulations on what you have to build, which it's a significant capital cost.
4 million or something.
Staff it. And so with all our additional trucking, we were offsetting costs from how we used to manage the old site, because we used to have a dozer and the pumping every year and the constant cleanup of the roadways, as well as even our admin staff dealing with the complaints from the residents on noise that were adjacent to it. So is in the ideal situation, I mean, John would tell you right now, we'd love to have one here.
Yeah, and the other thing too, we are still working with our regional partners in discussion with them to potentially build one or facilitate having one together. That's still an option. Yeah, so we'll continue to look at that. But Jay's right. It's an engineered site that's required before we get approval, Alberta Environment.
Okay, thanks.
And I would say, Councillor, as we look at our deliberate development plan writ large, that could absolutely be something that considered along with a satellite, public works satellite, but definitely be a deliberate effort.
Like how much more does it cost for us to ship it to Edmonton?
So it's not really costing it because Jay alluded to it already, but we had some operational costs to run a snow site. Right?
Yeah.
So the dozer pushing it up, the dozer ripping it down in the winter, in the
It could be like
springtime, taking it away. The cost of some of that extra trucking, it's a couple more extra. It's a few extra trucks per shift to go a little bit further away. Now, typically, snow to deal with snow removal costs about $1.50 to $2 a cubic meter to take it off the road, take it to a snow site, deal with it in the summertime when it melts, discharge it, clean up the ponds, those kinds of things. About $1.50 to $2 per cubic meter.
So what's our total budget on snow?
Total budget on snow without our internal equipment is roughly $3.2 million. So
Okay, I was just thinking like Barry's like 6, right? Yeah.
A few years ago.
yeah, and we could. If you went back to the averages slides, Barrie, Ontario would be
like twice our size,
around that 200 centimeter to 300 centimeter snowfall a year, probably double.
Yeah.
The population was butcher.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I know I asked you before, so I don't have a lot of questions now. Is the 24/7 versus 24/5? So the decision to move towards that and just the cost differences, because obviously you're saving on overtime, which I mean, you're paying double, right? Or at least time and a half, not know which way you guys are going the union, but
So there's a couple of reasons. So the 24/7, so like he said previously, staffing was an issue on the weekends.
Right.
So we did have a skeleton crew that would work 8 hours on Saturday, Sunday, and then we'd backfill if we got the storm. The challenge then is you're reacting if we have a big storm coming in, and John watches everything coming in, but he's also not awake 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so having those teams available allows us to get the roads back into working order very quickly and on a schedule.
Right.
And we're able to do a lot of those other proactive things too on the weekends that we weren't able to in the past. So there's an offset in the overtime costs that we used to have to pay. But we're actually getting also a stronger service and Monday mornings were always a stress for me walking in,
sure.
knowing that, we only had, 5 people on a crew for that period, and then trying to get everyone in on a weekend. And then you're calling your supervisors back in so they can start trying to get a hold of people to come in, and as well as the contractors too. So from a safety and a meeting the needs of the community, the 24/7 has been a godsend, if you want to call it that. But
Right.
You're gonna get noise complaints.
we get noise complaints, whether it's 24/5, 24.
Bellin Park parking lot that.
There's a couple areas.
We didn't have one last year,
No, okay, okay.
so hopefully.
And you won't have much this year.
Is it like,
Maybe she is.
I'm just, and I just from a cost standpoint, is it a significant difference to do the two? Because you do save on the OT, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're down a little bit in OT, but again, going back to what I was
Yeah.
before, like every winter's a little bit different. So it's
Sure.
not, it's really hard in snow, especially when you compare apples to apples, because it's just not.
I just think it might be easier on staff because they have more predictability in their schedule.
And if you go back to the historical budgets, you won't see a big swing
Yeah.
Right.
between the budgets.
So really, it's not.
No, and it also allows us, like, when John isn't just doing snow, right? So when we have those times where we get the hot weather and snow's not an issue and we've done our proactive work and we're ready for the next snowfall, he's sending people out to do the potholes because now we're blowing up the asphalt because it's -10 to +10. And so that allows us to get ahead of that. There's so many benefits that we've seen. So.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting to do it. But again, just going back to it a little bit too, like it's our the workforce that's coming in, the workforce now, they like consistency, right? So that working 24/7 is a way to do that.
Right.
And there was a challenge change management wise and stuff, but we're in a good spot now.
Yeah.
So how much money do we have an actual budget line to retain contractors, or do we just, how much?
Not to retain contractors.
Not retain, no.
Yeah.
Hourly rate.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're not fighting other municipalities on a big snow dump?
No, but Counselor, it is something that I'm very cautious of because there's been municipalities in the area that have put in a retainer program.
Yeah.
Before. During the pandemic, I was a little more concerned. So I am asking those questions before I head into the winter. We have our typical number of contractors that sign up for winter work on our list. Usually that's enough. If it changes and we have to do it differently, absolutely, we'll do it differently. It hasn't been too bad, but it is something I monitor on a regular basis with my regional partners.
Right.
Well, I think that in general, St. Albert, people consider snow removal to be up there with the holy grail of parks and snow removal. So like, if you ask them,
I had trees.
like, or the snow removal, I think it'd be a tough debate. So,
I agree.
I appreciate the complexity of what you've tried to explain to us. It's like you are literally just tackling I'm just trying to, it's like a challenge, even though it's going to hit you until it hits you. So, So I think the people in St. Albert, like, this is one of the reasons they move here. It's for the trees and because of snow removal. Like, those are the two things. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And the schools. Those are the three things that if you're like,
I don't
what's dry?
think 12 years I've been elected, I've had such a good workshop on Snow Creek. I don't even know, have you had one?
I don't think I've ever had one.
No.
So this is fantastic. Council learned a lot. I'm sure the new city manager knew nothing, so.
I still know nothing.
But the fact that this is public and not that anyone's going to watch a 3-hour video, it might. But, if we could take pieces of this out and maybe like the cartoon clearing video is great, but maybe we put John in front of a camera and go through just the slides and a couple videos.
Do shorts.
Yeah,
Do
something like
shorts,
that.
do under a minute. Here's this short.
Yeah, this was good
Okay,
information.
that would be your
because-
most useful, because if you make people listen for more than 90 seconds, you've lost them now, you know that.
And the Rick Mercer thing was great. I think if we just we realize we live in a winter climate and accept it and have fun with it and do our best. And that's the phrase we should be putting out to the public.
And you're right. Most residents I talk to, like once you explain it, they're rational. They're okay with it, right? Like, there's a reason why we're doing something. And stuff.
If you're explaining the same thing over 10 times, then that's when the video should come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great, unless you're talking to council.
Well, you really are passionate about snow, so I got nothing else.
It was cool.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Last thing, just though, in defense of the residents' complaints though too, and I used to get my nose out of joint sometimes, because you'd be dealing
Yes.
And people are always mad. But the hard part, our world moves so fast now and everyone's expectations are they've got to move as fast as everything going on. And unfortunately, what's the biggest impact to keeping up every now and then is a winter storm.
Yeah.
And so you're impacting people's daily lives and I mean, it used to bother me. I'd come home, I lived in St. Albert, my neighbors would be going on and I'd go to Sobeys and they'd be going on about this and this. And I knew the actual story.
Yeah.
And you sort of get defensive, but at the end of the day, it's a challenge because if we're not we, Mother Nature is impacting their daily lives. So there's always going to be frustration with how fast we're expected to be. So
Good luck, gentlemen.
It's gonna be an interesting winter.
Okay,
all
not gonna snow.
it's a good October so far.
Winter tires, that's the solution.
I like your point. No one next 24 hours.
I say when I lived in Carolina, it must be so nice to have no snow. I said it was until the hurricane.